Chapter 491. Jingwan leaned her head on Li Hongyuan's shoulder. You don't have to do this. Then why don't I take in 2 concubines now and have a bunch of concubines? Wan, what do you think? Li Hongyuan was exceptionally calm, so calm that it was cold. How dare you? Jingwan sat up straight and stared at Li Hongyuan as if she wanted to eat him. Li Hongyuan didn't have any reaction. He still looked at Jingwan emotionlessly. After a moment of stalemate, Jingwan felt as if all the bones in her body had been taken away. Her body softened and she leaned on Li Hongyuan. You know that's not what I meant. In my opinion, there's no essential difference. If I could control it, I probably wouldn't have to start over. As the lifespan of my previous life came to an end, everything would come to an end. What's there to redeem? What's there to continue the previous fate? If you were in my shoes, what would Wan choose? Li Hongyuan raised his hand and placed it on Jingwan's head, gently stroking it. What would she choose? If someone occupied your entire heart and mind, but the other person died in an absolutely unacceptable and tragic way, what would happen? She would probably go crazy. As the saying goes, if you don't go crazy, you won't live. If it were her, she would probably do something even crazier and more unreasonable. She wouldn't hesitate to give up everything. However, she thought so. If it were her, she would do the same. However, if it were the person in her heart, she would feel incomparably distressed and hope that he wouldn't do that. It was like 2 people who loved each other were about to be separated by life and death. When they were about to part, the person who was about to die would always hope that the one who was alive would live well, forget about him, and live a happy life. However, the one who was alive would often suffer a lifetime of pain. Would the one who died really want to be forgotten by his beloved? In his heart, he actually wanted the other person to remember him forever. It would be better if he occupied the other person's everything. However, he would be reluctant to do so. He would be reluctant to let the other person live in despair. Jingwan hugged him tightly and gave him the answer. Li Hongyuan smiled. Your husband is a selfish person. I don't want you to do anything, Wan. The more you do, the happier I will be. How many people usually had such a selfish appearance, but when it really came down to it, it was likely that they would have a completely different appearance. She was still curious, but Jingwan didn't ask any further. After all, that child didn't exist to them right now. She couldn't bring herself to touch the scars of this man that she had placed at the top of her heart for a child that didn't exist. As for their children in the future, they had to have at least one. After all, according to this man, without a qualified heir, he would destroy everything in order to not let others take advantage of him. There was nothing more terrifying than this, all right? What would be considered as destroying? It definitely wouldn't be just shaking the Qi Yuan's imperial court. That situation would definitely be many times more serious than the current battle between the Qi Yuan and the Xiongnu. That would be a real disaster. Even if it would only happen after her death, she didn't want that to happen. They would die, but there would still be relatives in this world. Thinking about them falling into turmoil and suffering, they would probably die with grievances. Whether the successor was qualified or not was one thing. They had to have a successor first. Once they had a successor, as long as it wasn't a real piece of rotten wood, they could do everything they could to make it pass. Jingwan felt that, based on their genes, unless the child was very unlucky and had some defects, it was unlikely that it would be a piece of rotten wood. However, it was useless to think about it now. Not only was the situation unstable and her body still immature, but the most important thing was that she needed someone's consent. Every time, he personally dissolved the contraceptive pills, and the one who made the pills was probably Gong Jiu. If she asked Gong Jiu to change the medicine, this man would probably know in seconds. Therefore, it was completely impossible for her to secretly get pregnant, so she could only wait. Perhaps when the dust settled, his state of mind would be different. Thinking about it, Jingwan became drowsy and her consciousness became blurred. Then, she didn't even know when she fell asleep. Li Hongyuan gently carried her up, but his expression was unusually cold. He wiped the water droplets off her body and put her on the bed. He leaned over and kissed her eyes. Then, he nimbly put on his clothes and went out. "Your Highness." Outside the door, Nanny Gong looked at Li Hongyuan, who was unusually frightening, and was a little frightened. "Keep an eye on the princess. If she shows signs of waking up, light another calming incense. Don't let her know that I have been out." "Yes, Your Highness. Please come back soon. You know, the princess can't sleep well without you by her side." Li Hongyuan took a look at Nanny Gong. This kind of care was a little strange, in fact. Without saying anything, he turned around and left. His sleeves drew a cold arc. Nanny Gong watched the dim light turn the corner and disappear completely in front of her. Then she entered the room and checked on Jingwan's situation. She put down the bed curtain and turned off the light. Then she went to the bathroom and cleaned it up, especially the bath water with calming medicine. Li Hongyuan was going out. What was more important was what happened during the day. Li Hongyuan was worried that she couldn't sleep well, so he prepared in advance. Because the medicine was put in very secretly, Jingwan didn't notice it. She was a little surprised that she slept so well. She thought that she would have insomnia. "So, I'm actually heartless. Even if the sky falls down, I won't worry?" Jingwan teased Li Hongyuan. "It doesn't matter. I don't mind." Li Hongyuan closed his eyes and hugged Jingwan. "Sleep a little longer. It's getting late. Wan, do you want me to do something?" Thinking of Li Hongyuan's theory of not getting out of bed, Jingwan decisively chose to close her eyes and stay in his arms obediently. Li Hongyuan waited until Jingwan was quiet before he opened his eyes. If Jingwan saw him now, she would definitely be shocked. His originally deep and enchanting eyes were now covered with a layer of dead black fog. On the whites of his eyes, there were clearly visible blood vessels. To a certain extent, these could no longer be considered human eyes. In reality, Li Hongyuan didn't need sleep. He needed time to recover. He couldn't scare Jingwan. In the time he left the residence, 3 lions, 2 tigers, a few leopards, and a few crocodiles died in the precious beast garden. Only those who had witnessed the scene would know how bloody and terrifying the scene was. In their eyes, Li Hongyuan was not a human. He was a killing god, a demon god. He made people tremble in fear from the bottom of their hearts. After he walked out, as a shadow guard, he had to forcefully control his legs so that they wouldn't tremble within 3 feet of him. Li Hongyuan saw this and only lightly spat out 2 words. "Trash." The shadow guard only felt ashamed and couldn't think of anything else. Actually, Li Hongyuan was very clear-headed this time. He didn't lose his mind at all. But because he was clear-headed, it was worse. Because he thought of more things from his previous life, his actions were even more ruthless and cruel. These fierce beasts seemed to have become the people he had, once, killed. Blood flowed like a river in the entire capital. The smell of blood in the air didn't dissipate for 3 months. This was really not a joke. And Jingwan originally slept late. Now that she fell asleep in Li Hongyuan's arms, she didn't take too long to fall asleep. This time, she really slept quite well. This sleep lasted for most of the afternoon. It was purely because she was hungry that she woke up. Jingwan rubbed against Li Hongyuan's arms. "Can we get up now? I'm so hungry." Li Hongyuan replied indifferently. He let go of Jingwan, but he didn't move. "Why, you still don't want to get up?" Jingwan wrapped her arms around his head and touched his nose with her nose. Li Hongyuan also stroked Jingwan's smooth and delicate back. "I don't want to move." It wasn't a rare thing for the king of hell to laze in bed. He had done it occasionally in the past. "Then get up and eat something before you sleep." Her voice was even lower, with a nasal sound, as if she was about to fall asleep again. Jingwan had no choice. Anyway, he moved quickly. It wouldn't be too late to call him when the things were almost ready. Jingwan got up quickly, then put down the bed curtain and called a maid in to help her freshen up. Because Li Hongyuan didn't get up, everyone's movements were very light, but it didn't hinder them from doing things quickly. Jingwan finished tidying up and got up. The maid took the things and followed her. Only Mama Gong was left. She quietly walked to the bedside. "Prince, do you want to get up?" Li Hongyuan had already sat up. He supported himself with one hand on the bed and the other on his bent knee. His head was back. The brocade quilt slid down to his waist, revealing his strong upper body. Of course, there were all kinds of ambiguous marks on it. Today, Jingwan was no longer a shy little wife who didn't know how to fight back and talk back. "Bring a mirror." "Yes." Granny Gong moved quickly and brought over a mirror of moderate size. Li Hongyuan opened his eyes in front of the mirror and threw it away. The situation was more serious than expected. Although it was not as obvious as before, there was still a problem. "Let Gong Zhou come here. Tell him that I have a headache and give me 2 injections. Mama Gong frowned and took the mirror. The excuse was actually for the princess. The prince's condition was known by those who were close to him. When he came back, Mama Gong also saw clearly that Gong Zhou had already given him an injection before, but it could only speed up the recovery. It couldn't be effective immediately. Knowing that her husband had a headache, Jingwan couldn't sit still. She hurried in and lifted the bed curtain. "Are you on?" Li Hongyuan's physical condition was definitely the best that Jingwan had ever seen. He didn't have a headache or fever at all. How could she not be worried when he suddenly had a headache? "Quickly lie down." She pressed him back down and reached out to massage his temples. "I'm fine. Maybe I just thought a little too much yesterday. I'll be fine after some rest." Jingwan pursed her lips and didn't say anything. What happened yesterday could only be a secret between the two of them. It couldn't be said out loud. It was hard to talk about it now. Even the mansion doctor didn't dare to look around when he entered the master's bedroom. Gong Zhou followed the procedure and checked Li Hongyuan's pulse. In fact, he knew that it was just for the princess consort to see. He also had to put on a show. Gong Zhou assured Jingwan that it was only a small problem. "Wan, go and eat." "I don't want to eat now. Come back and accompany me when you're done." Hearing Jingwan's obvious sigh of relief, Li Hongyuan said. Since it was only a small problem, Jingwan wouldn't be so worried that she couldn't eat. "Then I'll go first. Cooperate with me." Li Hongyuan's eyes were slightly open, as if he hadn't woken up yet. He smiled lazily. "I'm not a 3-year-old child. How can I be afraid of pain and act shamelessly?" "It's not that you're afraid of pain. It's that you're afraid of treatment." Jingwan rolled her eyes at him where no one else could see and left. As soon as Jingwan left, the atmosphere changed completely. It was cold and indifferent. Li Hongyuan took it for granted that he was the master. The others took it for granted that they were his loyal subordinates. They didn't dare to overstep their boundaries. "Gong Zhou, no matter what method you use, you must return to normal in at most 6 hours. Don't worry, Wang Ye. It won't take that long. That's the best." He closed his eyes again and let Gong Zhou perform the acupuncture. When Jingwan came in again, Li Hongyuan was the only one left in the room. The bed curtain was pulled up and Li Hongyuan was sleeping quietly near the edge of the bed. He didn't have the usual terrifying aura that made people retreat when they saw him from afar. He looked very harmless and quite handsome, making people unable to take their eyes off him. "Wan, are you fascinated by your husband?" Li Hongyuan teased. "You didn't even open your eyes. How do you know?" "Of course, I know exactly what Wan is like." Jingwan walked over and sat on the edge of the bed. "You don't want to sleep anymore? Or do you want me to feed you something?" "I can't sleep. I really don't want to eat now. Come up and lie with me." Li Hongyuan lazily patted the spot beside him. "That's so boring. How about I find a few travel books or stories to read to you?" "That's fine." There were all kinds of books in the room. Basically, they weren't serious books, and were just for entertainment. After taking 2 books, Jingwan got on the bed. Li Hongyuan spontaneously lay on her lap and enjoyed it very much. Jingwan read. Although she didn't have a proper cadence, she controlled a very good rhythm. She was neither too fast nor too slow. It was very comfortable to listen to. Li Hongyuan's mind was completely empty. When he was quiet, he naturally recovered quickly. At some point, Li Hongyuan knew that his eyes were almost healed, even without a mirror. Hey, there are some blood vessels in your eyes. Does Gong Zhou know? Jingwan touched the corner of Li Hongyuan's eyes and carefully looked. I saw it before. It's fine. I didn't notice it before. Jingwan was a little annoyed. It's just acupuncture. Don't you need to take medicine? No, I feel very good now. Li Hongyuan sat up and hugged Jingwan. He rubbed his chin on her head and chuckled. What should I do if I'm hungry now? If you're hungry, of course you have to eat. What else can you do? You're really 3 years old. Even if you're 3 years old, you still know this. Jingwan patted him. Hurry up and let go. But I want to eat Wan. Li Hongyuan hugged Jingwan and rubbed her, unwilling to let go. I won't let you eat it. You have a good appetite, but I don't. What's wrong with you? You're obviously delicate and tender, and you smell so delicious. It really whets my appetite. Jingwan touched Li Hongyuan's itchy flesh, and he deliberately scratched it twice. Jingwan couldn't help laughing. No matter how she begged for mercy, it was useless. She couldn't stand it anymore, so she grabbed him and bit him hard. She struggled hard and broke free, but because she lost her footing, she directly rolled off the bed. Her entire body and mind relaxed. Li Hongyuan's reaction was slower than usual and he didn't catch her. When he heard Jingwan cry out, his expression changed. He hurriedly wanted to get off the bed, but he saw Jingwan turn over and sit up, glaring at him angrily. She was like an angry kitten, sharpening her claws to scratch someone. It was clear that she didn't fall. Li Hongyuan calmly sat back down, smiling. He propped his chin on his hand and looked at Jingwan with interest. On the other hand, Jingwan's clothes and hair were messy, and a portion of her hair was messy on her face. She looked like a little crazy woman. The more Li Hongyuan looked at her, the more amused he felt. Then, he simply laughed without restraint. Gong Mama heard Jingwan's cry of pain, and unconsciously rushed in. When she saw this scene, she didn't know what to say. Young people these days, really. Gong Mama went forward to help Jingwan up. Prince and Princess are just playing around. You should know your limits. Don't get hurt. Jingwan brushed the hair from her face, feeling a little embarrassed. Although he was the closest person to her, he had never been so embarrassed. Her face was a little hot. Mama doesn't need to worry. I'm fine. When Jingwan said this, Li Hongyuan directly exposed her. Mama is right. Ben Wang will pay attention in the future. Jingwan glared at him. This was considered the pleasure of the boudoir. How could he say it to a third person? Moreover, his tone was so serious. Please, the smile in his eyes should at least be more serious. He was laughing at her like this, and he didn't care at all? Mama, help me dress and have the kitchen prepare some food. She decided to ignore him. This man, the more she talked to him, the more excited he became. Yes. Does Prince want to get up? Get up. Li Hongyuan brushed the hair in front of his chest. Even if he wasn't wearing clothes, he was still the incomparably noble Jin Wangye. Gong Mama went out to give the order and came back. While Jingwan was dressing, Li Hongyuan also got up and unhurriedly dressed. Although there wasn't much to do these 2 days, he was indeed a little tired and should rest for a few more days. Although it wasn't mealtime, it wasn't the first time that such a situation occurred in Jin Wangfu. The people in the kitchen were also unhurried and dealt with it with ease. At the dining table, Li Hongyuan drank a little wine. The war just started, the situation is not too chaotic. Wan, take some time and send away all the servant girls around you. Jingwan nodded. The originally scheduled time was around this time. Just in time to make some people happy. Jingwan was quite teasing. Li Hongyuan didn't care. They followed Ben Wang. Ben Wang has been looking for a wife for more than 10 years. Their level is still far from it. Jingwan almost spat out the food in her mouth. This was not shameful but proud. Jingwan was completely desperate about this man's face. However, at Jingwan's side, there were Mei, Lan, Zhu and Ju, Bai Xiao and Hei Mei, plus Fu Rong. Among the first four, Qing Ju was the most lively. She was originally a 17-year-old girl, but she refused to marry no matter what. Speaking of which, there was no one by her side who gave her a bad example, so how could she have such an idea? As for Hei Mei, she seemed to have a tendency to grow a little crooked. She became more and more passionate about martial arts and didn't like men. Then there was Fu Rong, a brothel girl who was violently disfigured. She originally didn't want to marry, let alone now. Usually, when Jingwan went out, she basically wouldn't follow. As for the remaining four husbands, other than Imperial Bodyguard Qian, there was one who was part of Jingwan's dowry, one who was also a bodyguard of the Wang Fu, whose parents were servants, and one who was the son of the steward of the Wang Fu's outer courtyard. They were all personally supervised by Jingwan. She called the four people in front of her. Because she was bullied by Li Hongyuan, she couldn't do anything to men, so she didn't treat these people with respect. Facing Jingwan's coldness, the four people were a little scared. Other than Imperial Bodyguard Qian, who knew the reason, the other three people were a little at a loss. What did they do wrong to make Wang Fei unhappy? Even if Imperial Bodyguard Qian knew, he couldn't do anything. Wasn't it right to take the blame for Wang Fei? Besides, they were going to marry the people around Wang Fei, so they had to accept it. Jingwan was cold, but at most, she would say a few words verbally. Compared with the fighting power of the King of Hell, they were really too weak. Among the four maids who were going to be married, only Qing Lan had parents and brothers. So, Nanny Gong and Jingwan's wet nurse were probably needed to act as the maternal family to send them off. As for the men, it was best to have elders. If there were no elders, she would find a way to deal with them. According to Jingwan's idea, the four maids should be married slowly one by one, at least in 2 rounds. However, Li Hongyuan rejected the idea without hesitation. My 4 maids, Wan Wan, are going to be married at one time. Wan Wan has her own people. It's better not to favor one and discriminate against the other. Jingwan wanted to say, "It's obviously your decision, okay?" But after thinking about it, she gave up. It was impossible to reason with this kind of person. If they were going to get married together, then they were going to get married together. Therefore, the Luo family still paid attention to Jin Wangfu to see if anything happened. As a result, in nearly 10 days, Jingwan's maids were going to get married. This was the biggest thing. Well, it was really a waste of effort. Nothing happened at all. After all, it was a matter of the Wangfu and it was only the maids getting married. Naturally, it wouldn't cause any waves. Lu Chengdi also sent people to pay attention to the situation of Jin Wangfu. Although that evil creature's son was still angry with him, he didn't cause any trouble, so he didn't care anymore. There were a lot of government affairs, plus the war in the northwest. He was so busy that he didn't have time to enter the harem. Coaxing his son and whatnot could be delayed. In reality, as Li Hongyuan expected, Lu Chengdi wouldn't really disregard the people and soldiers of the northwest just to harm Fu Yunting. Battle reports came in one after another. In reality, Fu Yunting was worthy of being called a tiger from a family of generals. When he arrived at the front lines, he used thunderous methods to stabilize the situation. At the same time, he also carried out a moderate counterattack and won. Although it wasn't a big victory, it still had an encouraging effect when Qi Yuan was retreating. At least, it didn't make the Qi Yuan army think that the Xiongnu army was invincible and flee. In reality, whether it was the imperial court or Fu Yunting, they all knew that the situation wasn't so optimistic. Because the Xiongnu army was fighting too smoothly, to a certain extent, they were slacking and underestimating the Qi Yuan army. Fu Yunting only won because he caught them off guard. When the Xiongnu army started to pay attention, it would only be harder to fight later. Lu Chengdi didn't know much about military affairs. Because Fu Yunting won the first battle, his face was gloomy. Those who didn't know the reason thought that he knew the key point, so he didn't have a good expression. Therefore, they all tried to persuade him. In the process, they also broke apart the things inside and flattered Lu Chengdi, saying that he knew how to use people well. Lu Chengdi didn't bat an eyelid and understood the situation inside clearly. However, when he was flattered, he almost vomited blood. If his original intention was like this, he could accept it calmly. The problem was that this wasn't the case. When he heard the flattery, it sounded like mockery. However, he couldn't reveal his true feelings. In order to stabilize the people's hearts, some courtiers suggested that Lu Chengdi should play up this achievement appropriately. Lu Chengdi waved his hand and allowed it. Obviously, in his heart, he held Fu Yunting up so high that it would be tragic if he fell down. Especially when he knew some of the actual situation. Once he failed, the exaggerated merits this time could be pinned on his head, thinking that he was lying about the battle achievements. At that time, it would be more than just one crime. However, Lu Chengdi's imagination was beautiful. The problem was that he had a son who was good at making things difficult for him. Therefore, things wouldn't go as he wished. Regarding Fu Yunting, this was only the beginning of his grievances. As time passed, Fu Yunting would only get more and more successful. Lu Chengdi could only continue to hold on to him and find an excuse to punish him, but the courtiers and the people wouldn't allow it. In the end, he would probably be like the previous emperors of Qi Yuan. His scheme failed, and he would make the Fu family into a position that couldn't be touched easily. To a certain extent, it was quite strange that the Fu family was able to survive until now. Of course, no matter how fierce the war in the northwest was, to the people in the capital, they would still do what they were supposed to do. Eating, drinking, playing, indulging in a life of luxury. On the surface, perhaps they would restrain themselves a little, but in private, without seeing the cruelty of war, it was useless to just listen to it. However, there was another person who couldn't sit still at all, and that was He Zhihai. While the northwest was fiercely fighting, he was holed up in the capital, Moldy. That's right, Moldy. There were too many aristocrats in the capital, and if he wasn't careful, he would provoke someone he shouldn't provoke. He Zhihai also knew this, so he tried his best not to go out. After all, he was actually someone who would get into trouble for no reason. That's right, some troubles would come knocking on his door for no reason. He Zhihai himself didn't know how it came about, so he was also depressed. If it was just this, then it would be fine. The problem was, the door of Jin Qin Wang Fu was also closed to him, just like at the very beginning. He Zhihai wanted to use the old method to block people, but he couldn't do anything about it. He Zhihai felt that he was about to go crazy from holding himself in. He wanted to volunteer to fight, but unfortunately, he didn't have the qualifications to go to court. What He Zhihai didn't know was that he didn't even have the chance to submit his memorial. Before he even left the house, his old mother and grandmother had joined hands to change it. And all of this was at the behest of Jin Qin Wang. Jin Qin Wang's role in the war in the northeast, no matter how much the He family tried to deceive themselves, they couldn't deny it. If Jin Qin Wang needed it, then they simply couldn't refuse. And for the past few months, Jin Qin Wang didn't make any movements, so the He family could only hold back. Now, after receiving Jin Qin Wang's instructions, even if He Zhanwei hadn't returned, the He family couldn't be negligent. No matter what the reason was, in short, Jin Qin Wang had his own goals and wouldn't want to harm Qi Yuan. Moreover, if it was really necessary, the imperial court would naturally call for them. There was no need for them to ask for help. Under these circumstances, He Zhihai finally couldn't bear it anymore and climbed up the wall of Jin Qin Wang Fu one night. However, as soon as he jumped down, he was caught red-handed. Climbing over the wall was a bit embarrassing. However, after a moment of awkwardness, little Tyrant he shamelessly stated that he wanted to see Jin Qin Wang. The people in the Fu didn't stop him and directly took him to the study. In the study, there was a large map hanging on the wall and a large sand table on the table. The situation in the northwest was completely described. Not only Li Hongyuan, but also the left governor Qin Tianming. Qin Tianming and He Zhihai looked at each other. He Zhihai didn't understand the situation in the capital and didn't have any interest in understanding it. He didn't even have any impression of Qin Tianming, so he didn't have any strange reaction and obediently greeted Li Hongyuan. Qin Tianming was different, but in the end, he was a wily old fox. He didn't show it on his face, but in his heart, he was a bit speechless. Jin Qinhuang was indeed powerful. He could even take in the He family. Obviously, seeing He Zhihai at this time, he didn't think that Li Hongyuan only had a friendship from fighting with He Zhihai. Li Hongyuan didn't even lift his eyelids. Since you're here, then follow and take a look. The number of people in the Xiongnu army, the general distribution of the situation, and where the Xiongnu were from the west and Xiongnu were all marked out. I can't say that it's 100% accurate, but it's 80% accurate. What do you think? Qin Tianming was shocked at Li Hongyuan's ability to grasp information. It must be known that the current situation of the imperial court regarding the Xiongnu army was only sporadic, but Jin Qinhuang was able to reach this stage. Therefore, the other princes were being played in the palm of his hand. It really wasn't wrong at all. At this time, the princes who hadn't left the palace yet were actually lucky. They weren't like the other elder brothers, who were almost played to death but still kept in the dark. Therefore, towards his son-in-law, Qin Tianming's heart was filled with sympathy. He Zhihai didn't have that many thoughts. Who was this Jin Qinhuang the only person who could make him lie down so easily. Therefore, no matter what kind of shocking thing he did, wasn't it a matter of course? As a qualified fanboy, he only needed to think about the questions asked by the person he revered. Isn't the battle line a little too long? When we first received the urgent report, it was only within one county. Now, it has expanded to 3 counties. The Xiongnu people's appetite is really not small. After that, Li Hongyuan inserted some small flags into the sand. They were the deployment of Qi Yuan's troops. Each flag represented 10,000 people. After this, the situation became even more obvious. Qi Yuan's troops have been completely scattered. Qi Yuan's troops are actually better in terms of overall combat power. Against the Xiongnu people, the more scattered they are, the more disadvantageous it is. Qin Tianming looked at the sand table and pointed with his finger. Is Fu Yunting in this position now? Yes. Li Hongyuan inserted the small flag that represented the commander-in-chief. Fu Yunting is in the right position. After all, there was a pass behind him. If the Xiongnu army couldn't pass through the pass, it would be very difficult for them to enter Qi Yuan. Although it wasn't that there was no other way, it wasn't suitable for marching. Even if they used a small group of surprise troops, they might be wiped out by Qi Yuan's troops who were familiar with the terrain. In Fu Yunting's layout, there was definitely this step. That's right, that's right. However, the situation is still quite disadvantageous. After all, he is young and has never led an army before. I don't know if he can command the troops well. Qin Tianming frowned. Whether he can or can't, we will know based on his performance. The situation is just disadvantageous. It's not a one-sided disadvantage. There are many ways to turn the situation around. Li Hongyuan threw away the remaining small flags in his hand and sat behind the desk. He clasped his hands and looked at the sand table. His expression was unusually calm. Your Highness, are the Xiongnu people and the Xiongnu people at odds? He Zhihai stared at the sand table for a moment and asked. Odds? That can't be. Aren't their troops mixed in many places? If they are really at odds, shouldn't they go their own way? It's obviously a smokescreen. If our troops can see that they are at odds, it will be easy for us to come up with a battle plan. Once their alliance splits, as long as we pin down one side, the other side will be replaced by Qi Yuan's troops. Compared to the Xiongnu people's bravery, Qi Yuan is better at scheming, He Zhihai said. Young General He, are you guessing or are you certain? Qin Tianming asked solemnly. Of course it's just a guess. I know nothing about the war in the northwest. I'm just looking at this. How can I know the specific situation? If I really know, why would I waste any effort? Wouldn't I be able to destroy the Xiongnu people and other countries easily? Qi Yuan would have long become the #1 overlord. The corners of Qin Tianming's mouth twitched. Even if he was a deep-fried dough stick, there was nothing he could do about these very creative young generals. If they were really at odds with each other, the success rate of scheming to break up the alliance was higher. If they were not at odds with each other, they might be used against. Of course, when it came to scheming, as long as there was no final result, it was hard to say. No one could be sure that their plan would succeed 100%. What does it matter if they are at odds with each other? Li Hongyuan said faintly. It was possible for a country to have internal strife, let alone an alliance between two countries. He Zhihai and Qin Tianming both chose to shut their mouths. In their opinion, Prince Jin already had a plan. Wang Ye, what about the former Wei and southern Qi? What's the situation? If they both send troops to Qi Yuan at this time, then Qi Yuan was rich and vast, but the location of such a big piece of fat meat was not good. It was like a pack of wolves circling around. There's no movement for now. The former Wei is in internal strife and can't care about Qi Yuan. It's hard to say about southern Qi. Southern Qi had placed many spies in Qi Yuan long ago. No one would believe that southern Qi had no ambitions for Qi Yuan. In Li Hongyuan's previous life, when Qi Yuan and the Xiongnu were anxious, southern Qi did not make a move. Later on, when Fu Yunting was in trouble and Qi Yuan lost a lot of soldiers and fell into a slump, southern Qi brazenly made a move. However, not long after the war started, southern Qi suddenly withdrew their troops. Because there was a fierce rebellion in Qi Yuan, the southern Qi court had no choice but to withdraw the troops that invaded Qi Yuan and settle down first. It had to be said that Qi Yuan's luck was good. Otherwise, no matter how capable Li Hongyuan thought he was, he would not be able to do anything. In this life, Li Hongyuan had stirred up a storm in the former Wei and southern Qi early on. The effect of the former Wei was obvious. Southern Qi had not made a move yet. Li Hongyuan was not sure if his plan would work, so he was not sure if southern Qi would send troops. Moreover, many things had changed. In that case, there could be unpredictable changes in other countries. Li Hongyuan was very calm and rational. The events of his previous life were only a reference to a certain extent. He would not completely apply them to the present. However, regardless of whether southern Qi would send troops or not, he had a strategy to deal with it. Alright, you can go back. Do what you need to do. This official will take his leave. Qin Tianming knew the nature of Prince Jin. If he could avoid contact, he would quickly leave, so he was very obedient. He Zhihai was different. He thickened his face and moved closer to Li Hongyuan. Your Highness, that. Li Hongyuan glanced at him. If you want to go to the battlefield, there will be plenty of opportunities. But now is not the time. Go back and stay obediently. Don't think about coming to find Ben Wang. Otherwise, Ben Wang has ways to lock you up for a year and a half. Don't talk about seeing people, you won't even be able to see a bug. If you don't believe me, you can try. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/12573370. HTML. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After making a report, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book. www.bicken.com. Biku Gur mobile reading website. Bicken.com. Chapter 492. Jingwan brought some food to the study, only to see Li Hongyuan alone. Has everyone left? Li Hongyuan raised his head and answered, waving his hand. Jingwan put the things on the table and walked forward. Li Hongyuan pulled her into his arms. Wan, what do you think of the current situation? Su Kong pointed at the sand table. Yuan thinks too highly of me, this thing. I definitely don't understand the slightest bit. It doesn't matter if you don't understand, you can learn, no one is born with it. Then, Li Hongyuan explained to Jingwan, minding his own business. Speaking of which, Jin Qin Wang usually didn't have this kind of temperament of seeing the wind and rain. Jingwan hurriedly stopped him. Yuan, a lot of things require talent. Let's not talk about whether I have talent in this area. Even if I do, it's not something that can be learned in a short time. Moreover, Yuan, you have to know that there aren't many all-rounders like you in this world. Wan's compliments. This husband accepts. Li Hongyuan chuckled. Wan, you don't have to belittle yourself, you know, this sand table originally came from your hands. Jingwan raised her eyebrows. I thought that this thing was already popularized in Qi Yuan. Making something is just taking advantage of my previous life after all, it's something that even children can have, it's different from fighting a war. But if you let me do logistics, that is, military supplies and fodder, it shouldn't be a problem. But I definitely still need to learn. No need to learn. Wan can learn without a teacher in this area. For example, in her previous life, she did a good job of delivering fodder to the northwest, establishing her prestige among a group of men. Unfortunately, she stood on the wrong side, although her position wasn't chosen by herself, otherwise, perhaps she could rely on her weak body to set off a different storm. Is that so? If there's a chance, I have to try. Jingwan actually knew what Li Hongyuan was referring to, after all, he mentioned it before. If there's a chance. Li Hongyuan smiled but didn't speak. But how could there be such a chance? In his previous life, there was no other choice, but now it was completely different. How could there be a need for her to do such a thing? It's already late. Still not resting? I've already finished dealing with your official business. Seeing that Wan is getting more and more handy, then, in the future, those are your matters. You mean, you don't even look at it? You're really at ease? What's there to be worried about? Anyway, I haven't seen it for a long time. I just need the secret guard to tell me what's going on. Jingwan was speechless. Aren't you afraid of making a mistake? You've got guts. With Wan's careful consideration, she's careful, Even if she's not familiar with all the links and makes mistakes in the middle, it's fine. Now, there's no need to be so careful. If the problem is bigger, they'll report it in time to deal with it, so Wan can be at ease and do it boldly. Since you say so, then I'll do it. I'm also very happy to be able to help you. Especially the feeling of working hard with the person she loved, it was really not bad. Alright, from a certain point of view, Jingwan was actually competing with herself in her husband's memories. Since they had missed out on getting to know each other, they had to make full use of the time they spent together to add more things to each other's memories. That's my wish. Jingwan smiled and kissed him, then said in an unusually bad mood, it's time to sleep. Li Hongyuan laughed and stood up with her, returning to the bedroom. After the two of them left the study, Imperial bodyguard Qian and a few others entered the study and destroyed the things that shouldn't have existed in the study at an extremely fast speed. In reality, they had only used a different method to hide those things. They still looked like they were in a mess. Those who didn't know the rules behind it wouldn't be able to restore them even if they found all the parts. Moreover, these things would be completely disposed of every once in a while and replaced with new parts. The method of disassembling and hiding them would also change. Therefore, there really wasn't anything dangerous in Jin Qin Wang Fu. Just as they went out, they saw Fu Rong coming over with a lantern. In fact, Li Hongyuan's subordinates had never relaxed their vigilance towards this person who came from a brothel and had a clear understanding of her background. In their eyes, innocence was completely without any doubt. Fu Rong was different. Her background seemed clear, but she could completely borrow someone else's identity. Wang Fei's kindness wasn't a reason for them to lose their vigilance. Moreover, if there was a problem under their eyes, they didn't need to mingle and could all be sent back to the furnace to be remade. It's so late. Miss Fu Rong still hasn't slept? Fu Rong's face was always hidden under the veil, neither too fast nor too slow. She paused. Tonight, it's Newbie's turn to keep watch for Wang Ye and Wang Fei. Wang Fei let Newbie come to take back the food in the study. Imperial bodyguard Qian nodded and took the things from the hands of another bodyguard beside him. Originally, I was going to send it to Wang Ye and Wang Fei. It's so dark here, I'll accompany Mississippi Master's things, regardless of whether the Master would eat them or not, naturally couldn't be handled by someone who didn't trust, especially by a person alone. Many thanks to Imperial bodyguard Qian. It's just that this delay made me a bit late. Bai Xiao, don't blame me, Fu Rong said with a bit of teasing. Ever since Imperial bodyguard Qian settled the matter with Bai Xiao, he had been teased a lot, so he had already become thick-skinned. This was completely not painful at all. Miss, you're thinking too much. We're all serving Wang Ye and Wang Fei. How could she blame you for such a small matter? On the contrary, if I let you go back like this, she'll be angry with me when she knows. After saying a few words like this, when they really went back, they were a few steps away from each other, keeping a distance from each other. They didn't say anything along the way. In the end, the food was given to Fu Rong in front of Nanny Gong. Imperial bodyguard Qian is a man who has tender feelings for women. Nanny Gong said lightly. Imperial bodyguard Qian's forehead was immediately covered with cold sweat. Nanny, are you praising me or harming me? Of course, I'm praising you. Although the girls around the princess are slaves, they are actually more delicate and precious than many girls from humble families. When they get married, they are all given good titles. You rough men should be more respectful and help them when you meet them. Is there anything wrong with Nanny's words? They definitely had a deep understanding of the power of this female bodyguard. Originally, as a secret guard, she was much older than all of them. Logically speaking, she was not suitable to be a secret guard. However, she was more outstanding than most of the men. Moreover, as a secret guard, they basically did some shady business. However, this female bodyguard was as upright as usual and always talked with a serious face, which often made people speechless. To be honest, more than one person was relieved that the female bodyguard was sent to serve Wang Fei before she married into Wang Fei's family. In fact, more than one person was relieved that the female bodyguard was sent to serve Wang Fei for more than a year. In addition, the female bodyguard had been loyal to her duty and put Wang Fei first in everything as if she didn't know them. Now, she had no scruples? Nanny, you're right. I'll definitely talk to my brothers when I return. As the head of the guards, Imperial bodyguard Qian should lead the way. However, it's okay to lead the good side. As for the bad side, it's better to remind them not to follow suit. Nanny Gong seemed to have no intention of letting him go at all. This implied meaning made Imperial bodyguard Qian's liver tremble. He seemed to understand that she was referring to him seducing Bai Xiao, but he didn't dare to confirm it. Imperial bodyguard Qian actually felt that he was wronged. He was just helping out occasionally and the number of times he met her could be counted with one's fingers. He didn't have any hope at all. Who knew that Bai Xiao would take a fancy to him? Wasn't this irrefutable evidence of his seduction? He caused the female bodyguard to set her eyes on him. Imperial bodyguard Qian, do you not understand what I mean? I understand. Nanny, don't worry. I will definitely. So, Imperial bodyguard Qian also knows that he has done something bad. So, you are still doing it knowingly? The sweat on Imperial bodyguard Qian's forehead became more and more obvious. He wanted to run away immediately. Jingwan had seen enough of the drama behind the curtain. She laughed foolishly and then walked out. Imperial bodyguard Qian, go back and rest. Imperial bodyguard Qian felt as if he had been granted amnesty. I'll take my leave. He ran away. It's just a small matter. Nanny, you don't have to take it so seriously. Jingwan knew that Nanny Gong was a little brooding about the private relationship between Imperial bodyguard Qian and Bai Xiao. Of course, evil practices should be absolutely eliminated, especially those who follow the example of their superiors. They should be punished properly. Well, Jingwan indicated that she didn't know what to do with Nanny Gong. You're right. If there's anything wrong with these people, you can scold them. Nanny Gong wanted to say something but stopped. However, she still abided by her duty. Her master didn't allow her to lecture them. Jingwan's eyes fell on Fu Rong. Take these things and share them with the others. You don't need to keep watch tonight. Just come over early tomorrow. Yes, Your Highness. Fu Rong never disobeyed Jingwan's words, no matter whether it was right or wrong. Nanny, you should also rest early. Jingwan lifted the curtain and entered the room. Li Hongyuan's eyes fell on Jingwan. Your nanny really wants to lecture me. Follow the example of their superiors? Oh. What do you mean? Jingwan was surprised. Is it improper to visit a lady's room at night? Jingwan remembered now. Before they got married, this bastard had really done this kind of thing, and it was more than once. You deserve it. I'm really sorry. This time, it's definitely more than what Wan knows. Jingwan's face was a little dark. In this case, there must be more times that she didn't know. When was the earliest time? The earliest time. Li Hongyuan thought for a while. When you first came to the capital, the night of the fire in the flower market. He didn't hide it at all and wasn't afraid of Jingwan's revenge. At that time, they weren't engaged yet. Jingwan wanted to slap him. You can't stop me, you can't protect your daughter's reputation, and I can't tell you. It made you dislike me. Thinking about it, you, as a nanny, are really aggrieved. Li Hongyuan said lightly with a hint of ridicule. Nanny Gong didn't like him. As for Nanny Gong, who once stopped him from getting close to Jingwan, Li Hongyuan also didn't like her. Li Hongyuan, that's enough. What? You know that I won't be able to find anything even if I dig up the old scores, so you're proud, right? It would have been better if he didn't say it. Now that he said it, Jingwan vaguely remembered that there seemed to be a few nights when she was sleeping in a daze. She seemed to have dreamed of being intimate with a man. She remembered that pair of eyes very clearly. At that time, she was still wondering why she would have such a lewd dream. After a long time, it wasn't a dream at all. It was really a dream. She was really angry. Wan, you can return it now. This husband doesn't mind at all. Li Hongyuan deliberately pulled at his collar. Return it. If she returned it, she would be taken advantage of. Who told her to be a woman? She was born weak in this aspect. The best way was still to ignore him. The living king of hell tried to provoke his wife's anger so that she would take the initiative to settle accounts with him. From there, he would take advantage of her and then do some shameful things. However, his wife didn't fall for it. But as a natural carnivore, the living king of hell never had the personality of waiting for the fatty meat to fall into his mouth. If the mountain doesn't come, then come to me. I'll just go to the mountain. How simple was that? The next day, because the horse track hadn't set the time for the next horse race, there was actually someone who had the guts to directly come and ask. Of course, going to Jin Wangfu, this kind of thing, the average person didn't have He Zhihai's ability to go alone. That was because a few dandy had made an appointment. All their courage seemed to have completely withered when they walked to the gate of Jin Wangfu. Trembling with fear, they pushed and shoved. Should they withdraw? Should they withdraw? Should they withdraw? Should they withdraw? However, before they could decide, the people of Jin Wangfu took a step forward and politely invited them in. It wasn't that Jin Wangfu had opened the door to welcome guests. To them, Jin Wangfu was simply like a dragon's pool and a tiger's den. After all, when they were guests with many people, Jin Wangfu wouldn't have noticed them. Now, it was completely different. After entering, they didn't know where to put their hands and feet. It had to be said that these people were usually like devil incarnate. Even if it was their own father, they could choke and stomp their feet. The servants of Jin Wangfu who served tea and refreshments also felt that it was strange. It must be known that since the opening of Jin Wangfu, this kind of thing was considered the first time. Although there was He Zhihai as the vanguard before, it was different. Every time He Zhihai came, he would be directly brought to the martial arts arena, tidied up by their own Wangye, and then directly thrown out without even a cup of water to drink. The situation could be said to be the difference between heaven and earth. Therefore, they naturally knew that their Wangye's reputation outside was very strong, but they intuitively felt that this was definitely the first time. It was even worse than what they had expected. Was Wangye really so scary? Completely not. Some of them had been in the Wangfu for a few years and had only seen Wangye a few times. Not to mention, after marrying Wang Fei, Jin Wangfu was definitely more peaceful than any other residence. They really wanted to tell them that there was really no need to be so afraid. Wang Ye wasn't someone who would find trouble for no reason. However, they were only servants in the end and didn't dare to overstep their status to chat with these young masters. After drinking a cup of tea, his trembling heart calmed down a little. Soon after, they were led by the servant girls to another reception room. It had to be said that these people were good at eating, drinking, and playing. They were naturally very skilled in coaxing girls. Seeing this beautiful servant girl and her dressing, they reckoned that she was someone who served in the inner courtyard. Perhaps she was even by master's side. Their eyes turned and called her older sister, older sister. Their mouths were especially sweet, just to fish for information. Of course, whether it was by Jin Wangfu's side or Jin Qin Wangfei's side, they didn't dare to speak rudely, let alone speak flirtatiously. And this servant girl had indeed replaced a few of the older servant girls who had married and was new to serve by Jingwan's side. Although she was still a second-rank servant girl in name, she had also taken over a portion of Jingwan's personal matters. These people had definitely gone through very strict training. They weren't considered old, but their minds were very clear. They smiled sweetly and responded. The things that they wanted to know but were not important were all said. It gave people a feeling that it was very easy to fish for information. In the reception room, there was a screen. Only then did they know that the one who received them was Jin Qin Wangfei. That heart that almost reached their throats finally settled down. After sitting for a while, Jingwan arrived and said a few polite words. These dandy were dandy, but they were also very good at flattering and currying favor with people. Otherwise, with their virtue, how could they still have their old mother and grandmother at home to protect and dote on them dearly? At this time, they also had a sense of propriety in flattering Jingwan. It had to be said that Jingwan had never lacked people flattering and currying favor since she was young. Especially after marrying into Jin Wangfu, there was Mu En, that #1 lackey. Mu En was basically well-behaved at Li Hongyuan's side. In front of Jingwan, it was almost like tearing off his face as a human and swallowing it. Jingwan was not used to it at first, but after a long time, she calmed down. The flattery of servants and the compliments of these young masters were definitely two different things. The starting point was completely different. Jingwan also felt it for the first time and felt that it was a bit novel. After chatting for a while, the atmosphere became more harmonious and they finally talked about the main topic. It was no wonder that these living ancestors were so enthusiastic about the horse race. Exciting, fun, and lively things were really not easy to find. Although there was a gambling nature in it, the horse race was an elegant thing. However, this thing was not something that anyone could organize. Because if one was too greedy for money, if they were not careful, it would attract the dissatisfaction of those in power and it would also cause many people to be jealous. Jin Qin Wang was in a very special position and no one could easily touch him. Moreover, Jin Qin Wang had a lot of money and there was no need to worry that he would fake it for money. To a certain extent, it could be called fair and just. This was something that others could not do. Whether one lost or won, it was not entirely based on luck. Based on various reasons, it was impossible for others to imitate this. These people just wanted to have a horse race every day. If there was no movement in the next round, they could only brace themselves and come. Some of the rules are being adjusted. If there are no accidents, this time should be set on the first day of each month. You can also listen to the general situation. That is, in the future, there will be no more posts. Those who are willing to let their horses participate can go to the manor to sign up. The number of matches will be set to 10. The champion of each match will compete once again, for a total of 11 matches. Excluding other people's betting horses, the top 3 will be rewarded. At that time, all the registered horses will be numbered and the horses will be drawn to decide the horses that will participate. Each horse must be at least 2 matches away from being able to participate again. Of course, if there are less than 100 horses in a particular match, there will be no drawing of lots. In addition, the owners of the horses will be anonymous. In addition to the horse race, there will also be equestrian performances. Regarding this point, the nature is similar to opera and is only for the public to watch. Then there will be the day of the second day when the horse race will be open to settle personal grievances. It will probably be a horse fight between two people. That is the general situation. In terms of the details, it will be further improved. That, Wang Fei Nyang Nyang, according to your meaning, anyone can sign up? Of course not. As for the specifics, we will make arrangements. These people naturally look down on businessmen. If they were pulled in now, there would probably be a lot of complaints. However, there was still room for manipulation. After all, businessmen were so rich that it would be a pity to let them go. Moreover, in order to not cause any accidents, there would be restrictions on the bets. As long as it involved gambling, there would always be people who would not care about it and would make a mess and lose their family fortune. Sure enough, the membership system still had to be brought out. First, they had to figure out the family's property and apply for the corresponding level. According to the level, the maximum amount of bets could be set. If it was not within the level, no matter how rich they were, they could only bet the minimum amount. Jing Wan was careless and distracted. Sure enough, she was also a money grubber. Of course, when Jing Wan said this to Li Hongyuan only said that she was soft-hearted and did not see anyone who opened a casino and limited the amount of bets. Jing Wan retorted that she opened a horse farm, not a casino. Li Hongyuan gave her 4 words: deceiving yourself and others. Well, regardless of whether she was deceiving herself or others, she still had to have a bottom line. However, these people did not care about the rules. As long as they could get the answer they wanted, it was enough. However, 3 times a month, wasn't it a little too little? Well, the horse farm did not belong to them. They had no right to question this point. Then, will it start from the first day of next month? There are only 2 days left. Will it be too late? Why don't we postpone it to the 11th? The Dragon Boat Festival is coming soon. It will be too late. How can it be too late? It doesn't conflict with the Dragon Boat Festival at all. Jing Wan laughed. Well, then I will have to trouble you to go out and tell others about this. No matter what the situation is on the first day of the month, just treat it as a joke. Wang Fei Nyong Nyong, rest assured. Leave this matter to us. We guarantee that on the first day of the month, it will be lively and will not be desolate. Other matters might not be like this, but on this matter, each and every one of them was extremely enthusiastic. Without using a single copper as an advertising fee, in a very short period of time, all the people in the capital who should know about it knew about it. And at Jin Qinhuang's manor, there was a long queue. Although they had not seen the horses yet, but each person had at least 1 horse. Some even had 7 or 8 horses. That night, the number of horses that Jing Wan received for the registration had already exceeded 300. Jing Wan looked at Li Hongyuan. I really underestimated the people of the capital. At this time, playing like this, aren't they afraid that the emperor will get angry? You don't care about it, but it's hard to say about the others. Say, if the emperor completely tidies them up, can't our horse farm be closed? It doesn't matter. When the time comes, I will go and plead for leniency for them. Li Hongyuan said rather calmly. Was it to plead for leniency, or specifically to anger Laozi? Jing Wan once again lit a candle for Lu Qingdi. This impeachment report, as expected, was sent to Lu Qingdi's imperial desk the next day. Speaking of which, this impeachment report was not necessarily deliberately not going with Li Hongyuan. Speaking of which, it was still a loyal duty. Sitting in that position, with so many things happening in the capital, one could not ignore it. Lu Qingdi's eyebrows were throbbing. However, after thinking about it, he still suppressed this matter and pretended not to know. Some courtiers were originally prepared to persuade Lu Qingdi that the current war situation was good. If all entertainment activities were banned, wouldn't it be suspected of singing pessimistic about the war? It was also extremely unfavorable to stabilize the people's hearts. Moreover, the precious horses raised by each family were basically not in the ranks of war horses. Thus, there was no need to care so much. From this, it could be seen how powerful the living king of hell was. Even the courtiers spoke up for him. The result of biting Jin Qinhuang and not letting him go was far more serious than letting him go. The Bai family was the best portrayal. Although the Bai family had only themselves to blame, the reason was still the same. Even if there was no cuckold on top of their head, they could still be cuckolded. This kind of thing did not necessarily need evidence. It only needed to create some rumors to cause a devastating blow. It should be known that because of the Bai family, many men were paranoid, especially those who only had one seedling at home. They almost really caused trouble. Moreover, when some people investigated, they really found a problem in the backyard. It's just that the emperor really favored this son. He didn't need the courtiers to help him explain. His liver was clearly angry, but he still didn't flare up. Not only did he not flare up at Jin Qinhuang, but the other courtiers were also the same. They were not reprimanded by Lu Chengdi because of the evil spawn in their family. At this time, nothing happened. Instead, it was a bit uncomfortable. However, no one had masochistic tendencies. It was naturally best to live in peace. For this kind of result, the living king of hell expressed a bit of regret. Under this kind of situation, the first horse race after the new rules were set was held in full swing. Seeing this kind of scene, who would think that the borders of Qi Yuan were raging with the flames of war? And because it was a new rule, people didn't understand the horses. Those who bet were completely relying on their feelings and luck. Of course, before the race, all the horses that participated in the race were first looked at by people. If there was a Bo Lu, then sorry, it was destined to win. Of course, the premise was that there weren't two similar horses that were unlucky enough to be drawn into the same race. And if the more favored horse happened to have a little problem, then sorry, the Bo Lu lacked luck and could only admit that he was unlucky. As the saying goes, horses of 1,000 li were common, but a Bo Lu was not common. Those who truly understood horses and could see the advantages and disadvantages at a glance were the minority of the minority. Just like this, on this day, more than 1 million taels of silver flowed. More than half of it went into Jin Qinhuang's pocket. Look, this money was so easy to earn. Of course, as the horse that came out on top in the end, it also earned a lot of money for its owner. As a person who had always spent money, this time hugging a good few tens of thousands of taels and being watched by the whole family was a rare sight. Don't mention how proud he was. And among them, there was an inconspicuous horse that also won tens of thousands of taels. It came from a small family. Because it was anonymous, there was no need to worry about being targeted. It couldn't be better. In fact, Lu Chengdi also sent people to take a look. He just wanted to know what kind of situation could attract so many people in the capital. Then, after listening to the inner chamberlain's report, Lu Chengdi coldly glanced over. The inner chamberlain was so scared that he broke out in cold sweat. Lu Chengdi's heart was especially bitter. A pile of things, his hair was about to fall out, but that son was so free and unfettered. He was so angry that he wanted to fiercely whip that evil creature. However, he didn't dare to do it. After all, that evil creature still didn't give him, this old man, a good face. As an old man, he could be considered as the only one. Then, gradually, some people found that it didn't seem to be a bad thing. For most people, although they lost some money, the evil creatures in the family spent less money. First of all, they didn't go out to fool around all day. Although they might be closer to the horses at home, no matter how close they wouldn't sleep with the horses. Moreover, no matter how well the horses were raised, the money spent was actually a small amount. Not to mention the old men, their wives would first pay out of their own pockets. If they wanted a horse, it didn't matter, they could buy another one. As long as they went back to sleep in the house every day and didn't hug all kinds of little demons outside, money was absolutely a trivial matter. Their wives were so sensible that the relationship between the two of them was definitely good. Regarding such a result, they really didn't know what to say. Then, the hearts of those who didn't participate began to stir. It was not convenient for them to do it, so they let others do it. Especially those old men who loved horses. They didn't want to win or lose, but they were like some big shots who raised flowers and plants. They had a superior mentality, that they had good things and others didn't have, which made them particularly proud. When such a situation occurred, Li Hongyuan also knew that it was time to take action. The next day, Jing Wan sent someone to send a banknote of 200,000 taels of silver to Lu Qingdi. The war in the northwest was anxious, and his daughter-in-law was anxious, but there was nothing she could do. She specially offered the money obtained from the horse race as a token of her sincerity, hoping that the emperor would not dislike it. Lu Qingdi's anger was immediately extinguished. Sure enough, his son was filial. Although he didn't admit it, he still asked his wife to send money. Although his son usually only annoyed him, at the critical moment, he only did practical things, unlike other people who only spoke empty words. Everyone found that there was a subtle change in Lu Qingdi's mood. Those who had their own information channels all knew what was going on, but they really didn't know what to say. And the others who were disliked by Lu Qingdi could only secretly vomit blood. First, they weren't as rich and overbearing as Jin Qin Wang, and 200,000 taels, to Jin Qin Wang, was simply petty. Only Lu Qingdi felt that he was good in every aspect. Second, even if they had money, they couldn't take it out. If they casually took it out, it would mean that they had ulterior motives to buy people's hearts. Therefore, as long as Lu Qingdi's heart was biased, then no matter what they did, it would be wrong. However, in this way, those who wanted to send their beloved horses to participate in the competition didn't have to hide it. They could be magnanimous and occasionally slip away to watch the competition, to feel the atmosphere that the younger generation was very enthusiastic about. On the 10th day, Li Hongyuan and Jing Wan were in a luxurious private room. The two snuggled together to watch the competition when Muan suddenly came in. "Master, His Majesty is here." Li Hongyuan lightly snorted and didn't care. In his view, whether that person came early or late, it was within his expectations. Jing Wan got up and sat a little further away. Since a certain emperor wanted to visit incognito and didn't let them know, wanting to give them a surprise, then they would also pretend that they didn't know. When Lu Qingdi came in, Muan hurriedly greeted, "This servant pays respect to His Majesty. 10,000 blessings to His Majesty." Jing Wan also pretended to just know and hurriedly got up, "Greetings to Fu Huang." Then, Li Hongyuan slowly got up, his face cold, "Greetings to Fu Huang." Li Hongyuan's indifference came from the bottom of his heart. Lu Qingdi only thought that he was still angry and awkward, so he didn't get angry at all and was even in a good mood. "This place is actually not bad." Jing Wan glanced at her husband, obediently took over Lu Qingdi's topic, and explained some things to him with a smile. Lu Qingdi nodded occasionally and glanced at his evil son from time to time. His son also wanted to save face. As his father, he couldn't expose him, or he would really fly into a rage out of humiliation. He praised Jingwan's gift of 200,000 taels of silver. Well, everyone knew that he was praising his son. Li Hongyuan coldly snorted, "She's the only one who's meddlesome and thinks about nonsense all day long. The treasury will not lack her 200,000 taels of silver." "Your Highness is right," Jing Wan responded with a smile. His son said one thing and meant another. He was obviously very concerned, but he pretended not to care. You're wrong. That's your wife's goodwill. 200,000 taels is really a lot." Li Hongyuan sneered again, turned his head and didn't speak. Jing Wan helplessly smiled at Lu Qingdi. Lu Qingdi nodded to show that he understood. Jing Wan laughed in her heart. "Well, it's totally not the same." "You nodded. If you really understood it, I don't know if you can keep it." Lu Qingdi was a certain age, and few emperors were in good health. After sitting for a while, he had to go to the toilet. Muan was in charge of leading the way. After he left, Jing Wan asked with a smile, "Your Highness, what kind of image do you have in Fu Huang's heart?" "What image?" "It's probably that I'm bad-tempered and always causing trouble, but in fact, I'm very filial. I put everything on the surface, I'm straightforward, I don't beat around the bush, and I'm also considered smart. That's about it." Jing Wan burst into laughter when she heard this. What did he do to leave such an impression on Lu Qingdi? Thinking about it, he had been an emperor for a lifetime, and he was still a man of his word. He even had the power to control everything, and he didn't lack anything. After returning, he had to imperceptibly establish a completely different image in front of his father. The smile on Jingwan's face disappeared. She couldn't smile anymore. She knew that it was actually a very difficult thing to do. It was also a very sullen thing. Her heart ached. Was it very difficult when you just came back? Not really. It's not that I didn't gain anything during that time. After all, if I didn't learn to endure and endure, I probably would have scared you away when I first saw you. How could I allow you to run away? So, the result shouldn't be good. Even if it was hard, isn't it worth it to exchange a few years of hard work for decades of happiness? Li Hongyuan chuckled. Jingwan really didn't know what to say. There was a short silence in the private room. There's an assassin. A sharp voice immediately set off a boundless storm. Jingwan's expression changed. She immediately stood up and hurried out with Li Hongyuan. As Li Hongyuan's bodyguards, the safety of Li Hongyuan and Jingwan was of course their first priority. They immediately guarded the two with their swords drawn and were ready to fight. Li Hongyuan narrowed his eyes. The commotion came from the direction of his father's bathroom. He didn't believe that this assassination was aimed at his father. Let's go. Li Hongyuan personally protected Jingwan in his arms. Speaking of which, once the private room was closed, it was actually very safe inside. However, Li Hongyuan wouldn't let Jingwan out of his sight when there was danger. He would never make the mistake of his previous life a second time. Soon, they found Lu Chengdi, and the surroundings were already in chaos. In fact, the situation wasn't that bad. It was because these people were afraid of ghosts and wolves that the situation was very serious. Li Hongyuan looked on coldly. As Lu Chengdi was traveling incognito, he didn't bring many people with him. Even so, he was well protected. It was unknown how his arm was injured, but Muan was more seriously injured. His face was ghastly pale. There weren't many people, only 3 of them, and they were dressed in the uniform of the horse ranch staff. However, they were quite skilled. Lu Chengdi's initial injury was probably due to a surprise attack. Li Hongyuan casually drew a sword from the bodyguard. Get out of the way! Before the others could react, Yu Zhongqing, who was at the front, turned around and grabbed Lu Chengdi, shielding him as he quickly moved to the side. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/1262979. HTML. Please click here to report an error. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.bicken.com. Bicken.com mobile edition website: www.bicken.com. Chapter 493. When Li Hongyuan made his move, Imperial bodyguard Qian and the others naturally protected Jingwan, paying attention to the movements around them at all times, just in case. Li Hongyuan was able to handle the 3 of them with ease. Coupled with the assistance of the people around Lu Chengdi, Li Hongyuan seized the opportunity to defeat them one by one. He was also merciless, breaking their arms and legs, making them absolutely lose their ability to move. It was obvious that there was no possibility of success. The 3 people subconsciously wanted to bite open the poison sacs hidden in their mouths. Li Hongyuan raised his foot and kicked over. The 3 people were obviously not on the same line, but they were all kicked in the jaw, eliminating the possibility of suicide. After dealing with these 3, Li Hongyuan suddenly tilted his head slightly, sweeping his eyes. The knife in his hand shook and flew out of his hand. With a whoosh, it brushed past Lu Chengdi's neck. A short and hurried sound. The neck of a woman behind Lu Chengdi was penetrated. She was still holding a crossbow in her hand. Her eyes were wide open and she died with remaining grievances. Because of this, Lu Chengdi was so frightened that his hands and feet trembled. If he hadn't just gone to the toilet, he was afraid that he would have lost a lot of face. The bystanders silently moved their eyes away, either looking at the sky or the ground, or paying attention to the people around them. In fact, the target of the person who was killed by Li Hongyuan was actually Jing Wan and not Lu Qingdi. This hidden fourth person might have wanted to take advantage of the chaos to make a move. Unexpectedly, although Li Hongyuan was dealing with the three people in front of him, he was also paying attention to the situation around Jing Wan. When he found that someone dared to make a move on Jing Wan, he brazenly made a move, completely ignoring who was in the path of the knife. The scene of Li Hongyuan killing people, Jing Wan had seen it before. At that moment, he was absolutely an emotionless killing machine. Anyone who touched his territory would not have a good ending. Just like just now, Jing Wan felt that his eyes were suffused with a cold metallic light. No one was born like this. At the beginning, Jing Wan was somewhat frightened. At that time, she didn't think about this problem. She only heard that Jin Qin Wang was malicious and ruthless. Now that she knew why he was like this, she felt extremely distressed. Clearly, she was protected very well just now. Even if he didn't make a move, she would absolutely be fine. But he made a move, to the extent that it drew out the coldest and darkest thing in his heart. "Are you on? Emperor, are you okay?" Yu Zhongqing supported Lu Qingdi and asked with concern. All of a sudden, Jing Wan seemed to have regained her senses. She clenched her fists and calmed herself down. She moved her eyes away from Li Hongyuan and walked quickly to Lu Qingdi. She held his arm and said, "Father, are you okay?" Just now, this daughter-in-law was really scared to death. Fortunately, Wang Ye reacted quickly, otherwise Emperor Mei. Seemingly realizing that she said something wrong, Jing Wan slapped her mouth twice. Don't blame Jing Wan for letting Lang Qingdi take the blame. She was not only protecting herself, but more importantly, Li Hongyuan ignored Lu Qingdi's safety because of others. That was a big mistake. Then, no matter how much Lu Qingdi loved this son of his, once he knew, there would certainly not be a good outcome. No matter how much he loved his son, could it be compared to his own life? And a lot of things that Li Hongyuan had managed in the past would be burned to the ground. Therefore, she could only let Lu Qingdi think that Li Hongyuan's actions were to save him. Only in this way could she not make a mistake. Is that so? Lu Qingdi's body was still trembling a little, and his speech was not smooth. That's right, these evildoers are really too hateful. Jing Wan was still a little scared and looked back, as if she had seen something terrible, and immediately looked away. Lu Qingdi also looked back slowly. When he saw the dead man holding the crossbow, he immediately agreed with Jing Wan's words and nodded. Old Six, you have made a contribution to save the emperor this time. Later, I will reward you handsomely. Jing Wan slightly breathed a sigh of relief. As long as Lu Qingdi agreed, it was fine. Anyway, in the situation just now, except for herself, probably no one knew what was going on. Even if someone disagreed, it could not be helped. After all, one was the princess and the other was the emperor. No one would think that the assassination target was the princess and not the emperor. Lu Qingdi himself thought so he did not doubt Jing Wan's words. In this way, the interrogation of the other assassins had nothing to do with them. Quickly call Gong Jiu over and let him take a look at father's wound. Jing Wan ordered. Father, take a rest first, bandage your wound, and then escort you back to the palace. What do you think of handing these assassins to the blackguard for interrogation? Old Six wife, you can arrange it. But his eyes were looking at Li Hongyuan. Jing Wan hurried forward, grabbed Li Hongyuan's arm, and pinched it hard where others could not see. Your Highness, even if your Highness is angry with father, it has been a long time. Besides, father was considering the overall situation. In father's heart, you must be the most cherished. Your Highness, don't you think? Li Hongyuan looked at Jing Wan, and his eyes slowly became lively. Jing Wan also heard most of the words. She forced herself to close her eyes, and then looked at Lu Qingdi, and said coldly, It's good that father is fine. The subtle change in the process could not be discovered by people who were not familiar with Li Hongyuan. You're done with just one sentence. Why don't you help father to rest and treat his wound? Jing Wan seemed to push him angrily. Li Hongyuan wanted to say that he could go to hell. But he knew that Jingwan was trying her best to cover up and whitewash it all for him. How could he ruin everything based on his mood? So, Lu Chengdi saw his son coming over reluctantly and unconsciously smiled. His courage seemed to have recovered. Before Li Hongyuan reached out to help him, he grabbed Li Hongyuan's arm. Li Hongyuan restrained himself and did not shake him off. He was in a bad mood now. It was as if he had just come back and wanted to destroy everything, but he had to pretend. It was incomparably sullen. "You Zhongqing, you go and guard the 3 assassins. Wait for the blackguard to come and take them. During this time, no one is allowed to touch them. I have old 6 here, so there is no need to worry about my safety." "Yes, Your Majesty." Yu Zhongqing responded respectfully. He took the 3 assassins and threw them into the nearest private room, guarding the door like door gods. Jingwan and Li Hongyuan stayed by Lu Chengdi's side and let Gong Jiu apply medicine to him. The others were responsible for comforting the people. However, the emperor was assassinated. No matter who the original target was, since Lu Chengdi encountered the assassin, he was the one who was assassinated. Naturally, the manor had to be temporarily sealed off. However, after such a thing happened, it was obvious that people were also in a state of panic. So many people had to be arranged to ask Lu Chengdi about it. Since the assassins have been caught and killed, they should do what they should do. "I'm still here. What's there to be afraid of?" Lu Chengdi was tough at this moment, as if he had completely forgotten who was the one who was scared to death before. "Your Highness, is the feng shui of our horse farm not good? This time, there are always problems." Jingwan muttered to Li Hongyuan as if complaining. "The bad thing is the human heart. It has nothing to do with feng shui." Li Hongyuan glanced at Jingwan lightly. Jingwan pursed her lips and stopped talking. It was just that the speaker didn't mean it, but the listener took it seriously. The thing that happened to the Bai family last time also happened here. In Lu Chengdi's heart, he also knew that in fact, someone framed him. He couldn't find out the truth, so he suppressed it and didn't continue to investigate. Then this time, who would dare to directly make a move against him? Could it be that the assassination attempt was also fake, but another trap? Of course, it would be even better if he could really die. Lu Chengdi clenched his back teeth. This time, he must find out the truth and not let it go. Therefore, this was the fundamental difference between a threat to his life and not. Previously, even if he knew that Li Hongyuan was framed, he still thought that it was fine if he couldn't find out the truth. But now he must find out the truth. If he really found out the truth, he probably wouldn't be lenient. Lu Chengdi's injury was not serious. There was only a long but not deep wound. Because of the poison, he would be in danger after a certain period of time. Fortunately, it was not difficult for Gong Jiu. After detoxifying the poison, he would be fine after taking a few more doses of medicine. It was not a big problem. Li Hongyuan proposed to send Lu Chengdi back, but Lu Chengdi was calm. "Since I'm here to watch the horse race, how can I leave without watching a single race?" He waved his hand and sat there to watch the horse race. He wanted to personally experience the warm atmosphere of being sought after. "It's improper to shout and shout," Lu Chengdi said, but his eyes gradually became excited. Jingwan and Li Hongyuan sat behind. They looked at each other and didn't say anything. This was nothing. The influence of the assassination had weakened a lot. Li Hongyuan seemed to be bored and played with Jingwan's fingers. He didn't care whether Lu Chengdi would suddenly turn around and see it or not. Jingwan struggled a few times but couldn't break free. She could only let him be. The blackguard came quickly. Lu Chengdi didn't give the order to keep it a secret. So, soon everyone who should know knew. Lu Chengdi trusted the blackguard the most. Since they said they would escort him back, Lu Chengdi naturally wouldn't say anything. Li Hongyuan wanted to go back with him, but Lu Chengdi refused. If the assassination hadn't happened, he would be happy to cultivate his son's feelings. Now, he didn't have time. It was more important to deal with the matter first. "You can go to the palace to see me in a few days. You haven't been there for a long time." Li Hongyuan responded indifferently. As soon as they left, Li Hongyuan no longer concealed his emotions. His entire being seemed to be shrouded in a vicious aura, looking quite terrifying. It was no wonder that he was so angry. Someone dared to attack Jingwan under his nose. It was already his limit to not chop that person into minced meat. It was enough to show that he still had some control over killing people in front of others. Otherwise, with his current appearance, no matter how blind Lu Qingdi was, he would still have some doubts. Jingwan had no choice but to be patient and appease him. Others couldn't get close to him at all. When Li Hongyuan calmed down, the day's competition was all over. Jingwan knew that Li Hongyuan was not normal, but this was mostly caused by psychological factors. She asked Gong Jiu if it was possible to use drugs to control it. According to Gong Jiu, other people might be able to, but on Li Hongyuan, it wouldn't have any effect. Moreover, this kind of emotion couldn't be completely let out. It couldn't be completely suppressed by perseverance. It was appropriate to vent, and at the same time to vent, one must know how to control it. As for the degree of recovery, they didn't even know the source. Naturally, there was no way to talk about it. Jingwan knew. Obviously, it could only be done slowly. When her death was over, when everything was settled, when he slowly let go of the knot in his heart, it would probably be fine. Wang Fei, why don't we sort out the people in the manor? Sorting them out naturally needs to be done, but it can only be done for show. We can't clean them all up. Jin Qinhuang's residence and manor were like iron buckets. It would be strange if it didn't arouse suspicion. Therefore, the horse farm was like a sieve. It was completely the result of them letting it go. But there were too many loopholes and there would always be mistakes from time to time. It was really annoying. In this kind of situation, the shadow guards and imperial bodyguards of Jin Qinhuang's residence were quite dissatisfied. However, if everything was cleaned up, it would obviously be more troublesome. Moreover, it would be a big trouble. In contrast, it might be better to maintain the status quo. Although they weren't afraid of something, if nothing happened, it would naturally be more relaxed. As the saying goes, don't be afraid of trouble, dislike trouble. But at this time, they didn't need to sort it out. Lu Qingdi was assassinated in the manor, and it was someone in the horse farm. Of course, everyone in the manor was within the scope of investigation. Because of Li Hongyuan's indulgence, the blackguard would definitely be able to find a lot of good information this time. In this way, the master behind these people wouldn't be able to blame Li Hongyuan. But, who was the assassination target this time? Was it really Jingwan? The person bumped into Lu Qingdi and was taken away by the blackguard. There was no way to interrogate, so naturally, they couldn't be sure for the time being. However, it was only temporary. The things that Li Hongyuan wanted to know, unless everyone was dead and there were no clues again, he would definitely find them out. After a preliminary investigation, the blackguard had already found a lot of problematic people and then directly reported to Lu Qingdi. After Lu Qingdi saw it, he felt sorry for his son. With a wave of his hand, he sent people over. These problematic people were all returned to their original masters as a warning. At the same time, Lu Qingdi also sent people to pass a message to Li Hongyuan. Those who were not pleasing to the eye, they should all be pulled out. Ben Wang has nothing to hide. As long as they work for Ben Wang obediently, Ben Wang doesn't care about their origin. These words were brought back to Lu Qingdi as they were. Lu Qingdi felt sorry and sad again. In his opinion, Li Hongyuan was really a good son. There were many things that could prove this point. For example, the antidote that Gong Jiu gave him. After he returned to the palace, he asked the imperial doctor about it. In fact, it was just a sedative. Obviously, it was because he was frightened. His son was so considerate that he didn't publicize it at all, saving his face. The misunderstanding was getting deeper and deeper. If Lu Qingdi fully knew the truth in the future, what kind of expression would he have? She was really looking forward to it. Where does the emperor get the confidence that there are no spies among the people he sent? Or, are his own spies not spies? Jingwan felt that Lu Qingdi sometimes seemed to be a little self-confident. He thought that he had full control over his court, harem, and the entire country. Sometimes, he clearly felt something, but when he looked back, he seemed to forget it. It was as if everything had returned to his hands. Was he deceiving himself, or was it that even so, it didn't matter as long as he still had absolute control over all his son's glory and wealth? Not to mention other things, there was a problem with the eunuchs around him. It would have been better if they didn't investigate. After this investigation, more than one person revealed that he left the palace in disguise. Not to mention how many third parties knew about it in a short period of time. Except for the chief steward who had always been by his side, the others were all sent to the Department of Cautious Punishment and died without surviving the torture. It was already like this. Did he still think that the people he sent to his sons were good? The blackguard's interrogation originally thought that the results would be out quickly. However, they underestimated the tough bones of these few assassins. The blackguard's torture instruments that made people tremble with fear were used on them, but they still couldn't make them speak. Moreover, they died in there after only 2 days. It wasn't that they couldn't survive the torture, but they were poisoned to death. Obviously, there was a loophole in the blackguard. It could be imagined how furious Lu Qingdi was. He had always regarded the blackguard as the sharpest sword in his hand, and he had absolute control over it, ordering it as he wished. However, reality slapped him hard in the face. Investigate, investigate, investigate thoroughly. Other than this, Lu Qingdi probably couldn't say anything else. In this way, the originally majestic blackguard was also covered in dirt. The only one who wasn't affected was probably Li Suyen. The commander of the blackguard originally knew that Li Suyen would take over his position. He had always handed over everything to Li Suyen. He was also happy and relaxed. Although there wouldn't be any merit, he wouldn't offend more people. Who knew that this time, Lu Qingdi specifically handed over the matter to him. Well, when something happened, he was directly scolded by Lu Qingdi like a dog. Li Suyen had dealt with many big and small matters. She had always been fine. In the end, when it came to him, something went wrong. How tragic. The problem now was that the few people guarding the assassins were also dead. The clues were naturally cut off. There were so many people in the blackguard. It was impossible to interrogate them one by one. If that was the case, not only would the blackguard's prestige be ruined, they wouldn't be able to do anything. Lu Qingdi only wanted results. Would he listen to such an explanation? If that was the case, the commander of the blackguard would probably lose his integrity in his later years. He would have to go to the blackguard's prison himself. The commander of the blackguard wiped his face and looked at Li Suyen with a slightly cold gaze. It was absolutely impossible to say that he didn't have any opinions about this subordinate. No one was still fine. The position under their buttocks had already been reserved by someone else. In order to smoothly get the position, they had to make way and pave the way for him. No matter how much joy and hardship, it couldn't erase the resentment and unwillingness in their hearts. Li Suyen stood upright with a knife at his waist. He lowered his eyebrows and narrowed his eyes. At any time, he was very respectful to this superior and never overstepped his boundaries. However, this attitude made the commander of the blackguard even angrier because he couldn't vent his anger. If he gave the other party any face, it would be his fault. It was fine if the blackguard looked at him with a "you're being unreasonable" gaze. If he wasn't careful, he would be called by the emperor. Do you have any opinions about this?" was enough to make him want to vomit blood. Most of the time, the commander of the blackguard thought that Li Suyen did it on purpose to put him in such an embarrassing situation. Whether it was intentional or not, only Li Suyen himself knew. "Ah Yuan, who do you think poisoned those assassins to death?" Jing Wan fiddled with a gorgeous flower casually. "Who? Of course it's me," Li Hongyuan answered matter-of-factly. Jing Wan turned to look at him subconsciously. Her eyes were filled with astonishment. "You're not joking?" Li Hongyuan glanced at her indifferently. "Why would I joke about such a boring matter with you?" "But why?" Jing Wan didn't understand. Wan, who do you think those assassins came for?" "It can't really be me, right?" Jing Wan frowned. When did she have such value that even assassins were sent out? The main goal is to kill you. It's best if they succeed. If they don't succeed, kill as many as they can and create chaos. Anyway, they're just causing trouble for us. In the end, someone was unlucky and ran into them. The assassins have no value, so there's no need to keep them. Let him believe that the assassins came for him. What's wrong with that? Jingwan looked at the sky, the earth, the flowers, and everything. In the end, her gaze fell on a certain person. Alright, if you think it's good, then it's good. Anyway, everyone can take the blame for you. Everyone can be schemed against by you. I was schemed against by you more than 10 years ago. I was cheated by you. Now, it's just a continuation. It's not easy to kill people in the blackguard's prison. Who's working for you? Li Suyen killed them. However, it's not considered working for me. At most, it's just a deal. This answer seemed to be unexpected. Thinking about it carefully, it didn't seem to be surprising. There seemed to be some signs last year in Jiangnan. As far as I know, Li Suyen is his adopted son in name. However, after returning from Jiangnan, I found out something else. He's actually our biological brother. Usually, if a man and a woman who aren't husband and wife sleep together, it's considered adultery. It's intolerable. However, if an emperor sleeps with someone else's woman, the man can't be angry. He can't take revenge. He has to take good care of the woman. If she's pregnant, he has to treat the bastard child like an ancestor. If an ordinary adulterous child is exposed, it's an adulterous child. If the adulterous child left behind by the emperor and another person is exposed, it's a rise in status and he becomes a prince. This is the dignity of the emperor. He has all the advantages. Li Hongyuan's tone was still indifferent, as if he was just stating a fact. Therefore, a man who was cuckolded by the emperor was probably the most miserable person in the world. Of course, other than the kind of man who used this kind of thing to get promoted. For someone like Lu Chengdi, a woman's resistance might be seen as a rejection. Then, what kind of situation does Li Suyen belong to? Since she had already slept with the emperor, she naturally couldn't get married again. That family had a beautiful dream of becoming a relative of the emperor, so they forcefully broke off the engagement with the man. The man didn't have any power, so naturally, the matter was left unsettled. However, that man's thoughts were all on the imperial noble consort, who hadn't entered the palace yet. How could he care about other people? Moreover, he was unilaterally pledging his love to the imperial noble consort. That kind of thing would hinder his relationship with the imperial noble consort, so it was impossible for him to admit it. That family was transferred out of the capital. After a few years, Li Suyen came back alone. His mother left the family after leaving the capital. She raised him until he was a few years old before sending him back. After that, she disappeared. Li Suyen stayed in the family for a few years. One night, the family was robbed. Other than Li Suyen, who escaped, everyone else died. Because he knew his background, he returned to the capital alone. After all, he was still a child. How could he survive outside? As a local official, he lived in the county. The city gates were closed at night. Why did the robbers pick on this family? It was terrifying to think about. Jingwan was shocked. Li Suyen Li Hongyuan smiled indifferently. Who knows? In my previous life, when I forced the emperor to abdicate, Li Suyen was there. He chose to stand aside and watch. Or rather, he opened the door for me. Regarding this, I had my doubts before. However, I wasn't interested in finding out the answer. Now, I pretty much know. The only soft spot in his heart should be his mother. Is this related to your deal? She's already dead. It's just that she died earlier than he expected. It's only been a few years. We've already found the location of her grave. His only concern is gone. This person, cold and heartless. He took care of the assassins and the prison guards. Those people, to a certain extent, were his brothers who went through fire and water with him. If he didn't kill them, they probably wouldn't give him up. On the contrary, if he wanted to, he could even help them clear their names. But he used the most cold-blooded and violent method. It was said that even the coldest person had a soft spot in his heart. Only then could he be called a person. Li Suyen could no longer be called a person. Moreover, he abandoned everything. Yuan, it's best that you don't use such a person. After all, he doesn't want to die yet. Li Suyen is cold and heartless. He doesn't have any desires. He won't meddle in things that have nothing to do with him. He's not cynical and wants to kill at the drop of a hat. He only lives for the sake of living. I'm afraid he doesn't have much hatred for the one on the throne. The things he did in his previous life were probably just because he didn't have any feelings for that man. Jingwan was speechless. She really didn't know how to evaluate such a person. In my previous life, after I became the emperor, I made him the commander of the blackguard. To be honest, he was very useful. So, you actually still want to do this? Probably. In his previous life, he was used to help you wipe out the family. What was he going to do in this life? I think that Wan might face some obstacles in the future. Li Suyen should be able to come in handy when the time comes. Now, he's just in case. Jingwan pulled her face. Then I really have to thank you. He thought so far ahead. She didn't want to make any big changes. Was there a need to use violence to suppress the situation? You're welcome. It's my duty to support my wife in her work. Li Hongyuan nodded seriously. Jingwan was speechless. It was useless to talk about this. Who's the one who's going through so much trouble to kill me? What does Wan think? Jingwan thought for a moment. Even if it's someone who has a grudge against me, it doesn't seem like they want me dead. Who told you that you have to have a reason to kill someone before you can kill someone? Wan, it's not right for you to always think this way. We were just talking about Li Suyen. To some people, as long as there's a little obstacle, even if it's a small stone, it can be a reason to kill. So, the so-called law was targeted at a certain group of people. She still couldn't accept it, but her heart was still calm. I'm your princess consort after all. The first person who has a grudge against me, dares to do it, and has the ability to do it, is your adoptive mother, Imperial Consort Su. Li Hongyuan got up and walked to Jingwan's side. He patted her head. See, you're so smart. Why do you have to be so silly sometimes? Jingwan slapped him and sneered. Then it's really hard on you to marry a princess consort who's always being silly. It's not hard on you. You're my wife. It's okay, even if you're a little silly. I can handle it. So, it's really fine. Jingwan's face was as black as the bottom of a pot. This man was always infuriating. The number of times she had suffered in his hands was more than the sum of the times in her previous life. But, if he made you angry, this man was used to coaxing people, so you couldn't be angry. If you hardened your heart and wanted to give him the cold shoulder, he could make other troubles. So, quarreling was quarreling. After quarreling, it was fine. If nothing unexpected happened, it would be like this for the rest of their lives. Although it would always be a meal, it didn't seem to be a bad thing. Who asked this man to be paranoid and overbearing like a child? If she didn't spoil and give in to him, what else could she do? Jingwan's anger came and went quickly. Then, can I say that the incident with the Bai family last time was actually her doing? Indeed, that woman knows my situation the best, but she's also the one who's most afraid of me. Then what should we do now? How are you going to deal with it? When Li Hongming's child is born, we'll kill them all. At that time, the war should be relatively stable. Now, we'll completely destroy the Su family. Li Hongyuan looked at Jingwan. Sorry, Wan, I can't immediately kill that woman to avenge you. Although there's a way to make that woman fall, it's far from enough. If you want pain, you have to make her go crazy. You have to make her live a life worse than death. Li Hongyuan's voice was full of ruthlessness. It's fine. Let's take it slow. I believe that you won't let me suffer the slightest bit of harm. Moreover, your imperial father is not a trustworthy person. To deal with some people, we can't pin our hopes on him. We still need to do it ourselves and ruthlessly trample on them, making them unable to climb back up. That's right. This was the real reason why Li Hongyuan didn't rush to deal with imperial consort Su even though she had lost her value. Lu Chengdi wasn't trustworthy. When he was still in power, he had to be prepared to be cheated by him at any time. Even if he trampled on someone, he had to be prepared for it to become useless soon. However, it didn't matter to deal with the Su family. The next day, a low-level official in the capital went directly to the Supreme Court to sue the Assistant Minister of the Ministry of Revenue, Su Mingzhong, for murdering his son and inhumane. Although the Minister of the Supreme Court wasn't as high as the Minister of the Ministry of Justice, cases that weren't ordered by the Emperor were basically major cases. Once it reached the Supreme Court, it wasn't a small matter. Moreover, the current Minister of the Supreme Court was an upright and impartial person when it came to cases. Ordinary people, even high-ranking officials, wouldn't want to cause trouble in the Supreme Court. If it was someone else, it might be delayed. However, in the hands of the 5th Tai Ching, it was immediately accepted. At this time, it didn't matter if Su Mingzhong's position was higher than his. If he was summoned for questioning, he had to obediently take off his official robes and go. At most, he didn't have to kneel. If he didn't go, then sorry, but the 5th Tai Ching could directly send people to arrest him. At that time, it would be even more embarrassing. Under everyone's strange gazes, Su Mingzhong's expression was still calm and he appeared to be neither fast nor slow. However, he was the one who did it after all. After so long, it was suddenly exposed. He also didn't dare to be sure that he had cleaned up all the loose ends. Therefore, he still felt guilty in his heart. Whether it was noble consort Su or Prince Rue, they were both shocked and angry when they found out about this. In particular, noble consort Su almost couldn't catch her breath. She had racked her brains over and over again and used up a lot of her trump cards, but she failed again and again. Now that Su Mingzhong was in trouble, it basically meant that the Su family no longer had any manpower that could be used. She felt as if her heart had been stabbed by a knife over and over again, bleeding profusely. She only hated that her adopted son's luck was so good that he could easily escape again and again. Thinking about it, the Bai family's only son was stolen by the mistress of the family. Others didn't know, but he just happened to find out. This time, even if he couldn't kill that little bitch Madame Luo, it would still be a big problem. However, the emperor was out on an inspection tour and all the assassins were killed. She was believed to have assassinated the emperor and lost many of her men. It could only be described as lucky. In fact, if it were anyone else, they would think that Li Hongyuan was lucky and not prepared for a rainy day. After all, rebirth was something that few people would think of if they didn't personally encounter it. Even so, noble consort Su still had a strong sense of uneasiness. It was as if she was being held in the hand of an invisible hand that blocked and hindered her every move. Noble consort Su's health was actually getting worse. In the past 6 months, more than half of her hair had turned white and was falling out very badly. Many of her hair buns couldn't be combed anymore. The reason why it couldn't be seen was because she dyed it every day and used a lot of filler every time. Someone, go get Prince Rue. Noble consort Su held the teacup and wanted to take a sip, but her hands trembled so much that the lid of the teacup clanked against the cup. She hurriedly put down the cup and clenched her hands tightly, hiding them in her sleeves. She didn't want anyone to see. She didn't want to admit that she had aged so much. However, she could hide her situation from others, but how could she hide it from the people around her? The palace servants who served her were very distressed. But now that the Jade Essence Palace no longer favored her and noble consort Su's temper was getting worse and worse, they didn't dare to say anything. After all, the words of a lowly person didn't carry much weight. One wrong move and they might even lose their lives. Prince Rue came very openly. After all, he was also at a loss and couldn't sit still in the current situation. Yes. Enough. Look at the situation now. The Supreme Court is only summoning his name and won't detain him. When he goes back, tell him that if he can't do it, he can admit to the crime. However, He can't prove that he took the initiative to kill someone and that it was someone else who set him up. But mother, even so, I'm afraid that he still can't keep his official position. The related people have already been dealt with. It shouldn't be. There's no such thing as shouldn't be. At the beginning, we suspected that everything wasn't just the result of that woman's revenge. Now that the matter has been uncovered, it's obvious that this point has been confirmed. Since someone deliberately set him up, there must be evidence. It's impossible for it to be dealt with by you. In addition, the matter of you helping to clean up the mess can't be exposed. When the time comes, we'll do our best to reduce his crime. Mother, in this case, won't the outer family. When you sit in that position, it's just a matter of saying a word to reverse the case. If you get involved, then it's really hopeless. The Emperor won't do anything to you, but he will be strict with your name. Tell them clearly that at this time, they should be sober and don't be muddle-headed. Even if she was really old, noble consort Su was still very clear-headed. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/126298080. HTML. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.bicken.com. Bicken. Com mobile version reading website. Bicken.com. Chapter 494. Indeed, as Imperial concubine Su said, Li Hongyuan had planned to plot against the Su family from the beginning. No matter how Li Hongming and Su Mingzhong cleaned up the mess, there was still evidence left behind. The so-called plot did not mean that Li Hongming killed someone, so there was no need to think about it. Not only that, he even revealed the truth of Su Mingzhong killing someone out of anger because of a dispute with a brothel girl. Although Qi Yuan did not explicitly state that officials were not allowed to visit prostitutes, but once it was exposed, it would be a stain that could not be erased. In the evaluation, it would even be considered as one of the virtues. Because of this, there would be even less of a need to talk about feelings and face. Fortunately, all the evidence ended here. There was no evidence that Su Mingzhong had killed several people in order to cover up the truth, and it was never mentioned. Prince Rui tried his best to persuade Lu Qingdi, but Lu Qingdi did not even banish him, let alone pay with his life. Naturally, some people were satisfied with such a verdict, but some people were very dissatisfied. On the second day after the verdict was issued, the mother of the deceased killed herself in front of the palace gate and left a blood letter. In the bloody letter, she described the Su family's immoral cruelty. She described how tragic it was when her son's body was found. She described how her family had been searching for the murderer like headless flies for months because of the grief of losing her son. She accused the Tian family of being unfair and protecting the murderer. It could be said that she cried tears of blood with every word. At the end of the bloody letter, she left the words, "Return my son," which made people's hearts ache. This time, it could be said that a hornet's nest was poked. Especially in the various academies, it seemed that because of someone's instigation, it caused all kinds of anger. Because Su Mingzhong also graduated from the imperial examination and became famous at a young age, he was once regarded as a role model by countless scholars and was quite respected. Now, the amount of respect they had was 10 times more than before. Because Su Mingzhong had climbed up the ranks too quickly these years, he was already the left assistant minister of the Ministry of Revenue in his 30s, which attracted the jealousy of many people. Now, they were adding insult to injury and fanning the flames. They said that Su Mingzhong did not deserve to be a scholar and asked the emperor to punish him severely. They once caused a ruckus at the palace gate. If it were not for someone inside controlling the situation, they might have already broken into the palace. Then, this fire burned imperial concubine Su and Prince Rui. Su She was a noble consort, yet she did not restrain or advise her family. Instead, she indulged them in all kinds of ways. She was not worthy of sitting in this position. At the same time, they shouted that they didn't believe that noble consort Su and Prince Rui didn't know about this matter. They must have helped conceal it and helped the tyrant. The Su family was even more miserable. From top to bottom, they did not dare to go out. If they went out, they would be baptized by stones and rotten vegetables. Of course, the people who did this were not the students, but the ordinary people. These people seemed to have been brainwashed, thinking that the Su family was evil beyond redemption. Imperial concubine Su and Prince Rue weren't the only ones in a terrible fix. Lu Chengdi was also having a terrible headache. This wasn't the first time he had used his connections to get away with it, but it had never been this serious before. What was wrong with him this time? All right, everyone knew that the deceased wasn't convinced and was too unyielding. Thus, this storm was set off. As scholars, they were the future pillars of the Qi Yuan. With so many people, Lu Chengdi definitely couldn't give the order to severely punish them. Thus, he could only punish the main culprit to vent the anger of the people. Su Mingzhong was sentenced to exile. Not only that, the other officials in the Su family were more or less affected. Especially Su Mingzhong's father, who was demoted by 3 ranks. The reason was that he did not teach his son well. Speaking of which, Su Mingzhong's official position was more than 3 ranks higher than his father's. In this situation, whether it was the imperial court or the Su family, they should all follow Su Mingzhong's lead. To say that Su Mingzhong's father did not teach his son well was somewhat untenable. However, Lu Chengdi was also implicated, so he naturally took his anger out on him. After changing the verdict, Emperor Lu Cheng issued an edict to all the academies. As a place to educate people, they should properly guide the students. How could they gather people to make trouble? They must be strict with the students. If there was a next time, they would be severely punished. Among them, the Imperial College was the most severe. Who let the Imperial College be the National Academy? The Imperial College's chancellor was directly removed. This Imperial College's chancellor was Zhou Yingshuang's father-in-law. The whole family was gloomy and gloomy. At one point, they wanted Zhou Yingshuang to go to Jin Qinhuang Fu to find Jingwan for help. When Zhou Yingshuang gave birth to a child, because of the difficult birth and heavy bleeding, her body was seriously damaged. She was in confinement for a full 100 days. Although she was out now, she was still recuperating. In Zhou Yingshuang's view, this was a matter for the emperor to decide. She shouldn't have involved her best friend. Moreover, although Jin Qinhuang was a Wangye, he didn't have any power. If he meddled in this matter, wouldn't it be asking for trouble? Moreover, her father-in-law was only removed from the position of Imperial College's chancellor. His rank didn't change, but he was moved to a less noble position. She was going to recuperate and take care of her son who wasn't in a good condition. Before, Jingwan had already told her that she must be mentally prepared for her son's possible situation. In fact, Jingwan didn't want to say it, but for Zhou Yingshuang's sake, she still sent someone to say it. As a married woman, she always needed to settle down. If this child really wasn't good, she must have a plan and prepare early. Later, when others saw and pointed at her, she wouldn't feel so bad. Moreover, if she wanted to give birth to another child, she must recuperate well. If the child wasn't good and she didn't know the reason, she would frown and feel depressed. How could she recuperate well? In fact, it could be seen now that the child really wasn't good. Of course, it wasn't as bad as expected. However, it wasn't only for Zhou Yingshuang herself. If she wanted this child to have a better future, it was necessary for him to have a biological brother. This was decided by the surrounding background and no one could do anything about it. Zhou Yingshuang wasn't a heartless person. No matter how bad her son was, he was still a piece of meat that fell from her body. She would do her best to raise him. Therefore, right now, she just needed to recuperate. Taking care of the child was the most important thing. Everything else had to stand aside. Although her mother-in-law and the others were angry, they didn't dare to do anything. At most, they just gave a cold face. At this time, the situation took a turn for the better. All the students jointly wrote a letter, sincerely remorseful, hoping that the emperor would be lenient. Lu Chengdi wasn't unreasonable. In the end, Zhou Yingshuang's father-in-law was reinstated. In the end, Those who should be punished were punished, and those who shouldn't be implicated weren't implicated. What's wrong? Isn't that good friend of yours fine? Or are you not happy? Li Hongyuan hugged Jingwan and pinched her face. Someone died. An innocent person. Li Hongyuan knew that Jingwan was referring to the deceased's mother. I didn't expect this either. If we had trampled on Su Mingzhong from the beginning, instead of making a turn and having an additional plan to let him turn things around, perhaps this wouldn't have. Wan, because something unexpected happened, what happened later was logical. She's innocent, but some things can't be settled like this. You have to know that if Su Mingzhong turned things around, there might be more innocent people. Moreover, according to your logic, Su Mingzhong is also innocent. After all, he was schemed against. In the scheme, I only played a role in adding fuel to the fire. I'm also one of the main culprits. How are you going to settle it? There are so many people in the world. Perhaps every day, or even every moment, there are innocent people who might get into trouble or die. Can you do anything about it? In our position, sacrifice is necessary. Whether it's intentional or unintentional, if we don't do it, then we and the people close to us will be sacrificed by others. Are you going to give up yourself and the people related to you for others? That's no longer a person. It's a Buddha who saves all living things from suffering, Jingwan murmured. So, my pity is actually very laughable. Forget it. I know you're stupid. I know you're influenced by the memories of your previous life and cherish human life. I won't make fun of you. As long as you don't make trouble for no reason, I'll be thankful. At most, when you do things, try to avoid it as much as possible to comfort your bodhisattva heart. Tell me, I'm a living king of hell who kills people like scything flax. Why did I marry a wife like you? I guess the heavens don't like me and specially sent you to subdue me. Isn't that so? Across time and space. Jingwan was amused by him, and her negative emotions dissipated a little. However, Jingwan also knew that every time something like this happened, her emotions would be affected. After every time, she was very clear that since she wanted to do something, this kind of thing was inevitable. The next time, it would still be out of control. If it continued like this for a long time, it definitely wouldn't work. It might even be used by others. At that time, if she was completely affected by her emotions, then unpredictable things might happen. For example, someone used this to destroy their relationship. Once they were separated, there might be a loophole that could be exploited and used to threaten him. According to how much he valued her, the consequences were unimaginable. Jingwan's heart trembled. For this man, she had to abandon this point. She wouldn't take the initiative to harm him, but she could also calm down and control herself when it happened. Yuan, the Ministry of Justice should have all kinds of files, especially cases where people died. Can you bring some back for me to see? Li Hongyuan immediately understood Jingwan's intention. Are you sure? I'm sure. Jingwan nodded very decisively. Okay. Although he felt that it didn't matter if Jingwan was soft-hearted, it didn't matter if she changed. Moreover, her original heart wouldn't change no matter how many files she read. For example, she could be spoiled to the point of being delicate, but she would never be spoiled. Therefore, Li Hongyuan didn't stop her. Moreover, it was good that his wife had less pity. Otherwise, he would need to comfort her every time she encountered something. He would also feel tired. Well, he could only think about this in his heart. If his wife knew, she would definitely be angry again. Alas, pampering his wife was also a skill. Once Jingwan made up her mind to do something, she wouldn't give up easily. All the local homicide cases would be gathered at the Ministry of Justice, and the Ministry of Justice would make the final judgment. Therefore, the number of homicide case files accumulated over the years in the Ministry of Justice was definitely beyond imagination. Jean Qin Wang inexplicably came to the Ministry of Justice to ask for the homicide case files, causing everyone in the Ministry of Justice to tremble in fear. What kind of trouble was this? Speaking of which, it was just some files, and it was just ordinary homicide case files. It wasn't some sealed, confidential file. To be honest, As long as there was a little connection, they could basically take a look at these files. It was just that the average person wouldn't be as open and aboveboard as Li Hongyuan. And for people who weren't ordinary like him, no one would be interested in flipping through these files. If the King of Hell wanted it, would they dare to not give it? Definitely not. The Minister of Justice hurriedly gave the order. As a result, piles and piles of files were carried out. Li Hongyuan's face was a bit dark. Did these people know how to do things? What did they want to do by bringing out so many files? He expressionlessly glanced at them and turned to leave. The crowd was a bit confused. What was going on? How did they provoke this living ancestor? Muan smiled as he stepped forward and casually hugged a portion. These files are just for a look. There's no other meaning. I'll take a portion today. After I'm done, I'll come back for more. Don't worry, no matter how much I took, I'll definitely return it intact. With that said, the people in the Ministry of Justice had a bit of confidence in their hearts. However, the Minister of Justice was still not at ease. If something happened, he wouldn't be able to handle it. It was better to quickly report to the higher-ups. If it was Lu Chengdi, he would also find it strange. But there were too many things to do. How could he care about that? If he wants it, just give it to him. It's not a big deal. With Lu Chengdi's words, the Minister of Justice was relieved. No matter what happened, it wouldn't have anything to do with him. It's just that these people, probably no one would think that these things were only used by Jean Qin Wang Fei to train her courage. Therefore, things that could have been very simple, because of unknown reasons and because it involved the living King of Hell, would always be endlessly imagined by people. Lu Chengdi also wanted to know, but he couldn't even send a person to ask. There was no other way. The people at his side were all from the Ministry of Internal Affairs. Firstly, there were many things that they hadn't learned, so he didn't like using them. Secondly, with the previous lesson, he basically didn't trust these people and wasn't allowed to serve them closely. It was also because of this that, as the head steward, he originally only needed to brush his presence in front of the emperor and ask for a trick at the appropriate time. But now, there were many things that he needed to do, so he had to step out and hit the back of the head with his heel. In order to raise provisions, the Ministry of Revenue hated that they couldn't split each person in half. The low-ranking officials couldn't even go home at night, and the left assistant minister had a problem. The things that should have been done by him all fell on the Minister of Revenue and the right assistant minister's heads. These two people also didn't need to think about going home. And the position of the left assistant minister of revenue was also very important. It was also a lucrative position that countless people coveted. Even at this juncture, there were many people fighting openly and secretly for this position, especially Prince Rue, who had suffered heavy losses. He was even more determined to get this position. But how could the others let it go so easily? Especially the princes who had been conferred the title of prince. They had long been unwilling to rely on those in front of them. The power in their hands couldn't support their growing ambitions. Now that there was a chance, they were like hungry wolves. And Lu Chengdi also didn't know what he wanted to do. He let the court officials recommend him, but for a long time, he didn't decide on a candidate. Is the emperor preparing to set the bait? When the Minister of Personnel passed by the Grand Secretary of the Cabinet, he stopped for a moment and said lightly. The Grand Secretary of the Cabinet stroked his beard. Probably. The Minister of Personnel nodded and cupped his hands. This official will take his leave first. Luo Daren, take care. Ruan Ruizhong returned the greeting. These two top officials of the imperial court had already reached a tacit understanding after a short discussion. However, since Prince Jean didn't express anything on this matter, then they weren't prepared to get involved. Even if they were to recommend someone, it would be on the basis of appropriateness and not out of goodwill. Regardless of whether the emperor wanted to trap his son or fish for his son, they would just calmly watch the show. Although the war at the border went as expected, Fu Yunting won the first battle and wasn't so lucky later on. However, the Xiongnu's invasion of the Qi Yuan wasn't so smooth. It could even be said that they had stopped advancing. Both sides seemed to be fighting a war of attrition. In Lu Chengdi's words, there was already some dissatisfaction towards Fu Yunting. However, It seemed that he was still a bit resentful towards Fu Yunting and couldn't be compared to his father's generation. But, just this alone was enough to let Ruan Ruizhong and Luo Peishan see that he really wanted to kill Fu Yunting. If their guess was correct, then this matter really made people feel incomparably bitterly disappointed. In this way, they could only wait for Lu Chengdi to make his move. Other than this, there was no better way. In the tense game, before Su Mingzhong was sent out of the capital, Su Guifei summoned her son, Li Hongming, and dismissed everyone. No one knew what Su Guifei said to her son. The Su family was very miserably harmed by Su Mingzhong, but the whole family didn't care and sent him off, putting on a sincere show. In the end, he was Su Guifei's nephew. The people escorting him didn't dare to treat him harshly. In addition, with Prince Rui's help, the journey was relatively good. However, before one handover, the bailiff suddenly had diarrhea and left for a while. After that, the handover was very smooth. However, one of the bailiffs felt that something wasn't right. However, he couldn't tell what was wrong. "What are you thinking about? Hurry up and leave. When the job is done, let's go drink. We still have to rush back tomorrow," the other one called out. That bailiff thus threw this matter to the side and didn't think about it anymore. Of course, this was all for later. Let's not talk about it for now. The people in the capital were so busy that they didn't have any free time. They were so idle that they were about to go moldy. However, they could only go step by step. May passed and June arrived. Because of the war and important festivals, Lu Chengdi didn't participate. Naturally, there was no hope of going to the Summer Palace. However, only a few people could go to the Summer Palace. Most people were still used to the capital's extreme heat. Li Hongyuan never wronged his own people, let alone his wife. He directly moved to the country estate. This time, he didn't even ask for Lu Chengdi's permission. Since they couldn't go to the Summer Palace, many people naturally did this. Because the other princes' families only went there, they didn't need to ask for Lu Chengdi's permission. Li Hongyuan's two country estates were adjacent to each other. The one they lived in basically didn't receive outsiders, including the family members of their brothers. There weren't many people who could confidently go to the country estate without worrying about being disliked. Most people knew their place and didn't ask for trouble, so as not to lose face. However, the other country estate was open. Although it wasn't the day for horse racing, the leisure area was quite pleasant. It was really a good place to have fun during the Summer Palace. Previously, the focus was on the horse track. Now, some people even wanted to live there and not leave. Because of the previous things that happened one after another, people had some fear of the country estate. At this time, they didn't care so much. In this way, not only did the people from the nearby villages come over all day long, many men, women, old, and young in the capital also came over when they had free time. No matter what age they were, they seemed to be able to find a way to entertain themselves. It took less than half a month for it to go from being cold and cheerless in the beginning to being a boiling cauldron of voices. Even Jing Wan was a little surprised by such a grand occasion. And the flourishing popularity naturally brought about rolling in money. It was not an exaggeration to say that it made a lot of money every day. The daily income might not be as much as the horse race, but in a month's time, the net income was definitely several times more than the 3 horse races. So much money that Jingwan's liver trembled a little when she saw it. Li Hongyuan was a little surprised at first, but after that, he was completely calm and even a little indifferent. This situation will only happen in these 2 or 3 months. After that, it will naturally die down. How much money can it make? And this is the only one of its kind. Once there are people who copy it in private, it will naturally be cold and cheerless. Jingwan smiled. Although the original purpose was for people to have fun, I didn't think of making much money. Money is actually not the most important thing. Of course, money is not the most important thing. After all, with the money in Wan's hands, even if you squander it for 10 lifetimes, can you squander it all? Jingwan lightly gave him a supercilious look. Squander it? Before the marriage, you collected those precious stones, pearls, and jade. You don't even need to dismantle the old ones to make new ones. I won't be able to use them all in several lifetimes. Things like rouge and face powder are all taken from Rouge Pavilion. What's left is the materials for cutting clothes. Don't you have workshops for weaving all kinds of materials in various places? How much can I use? In the end, it seems that I spend a little more money on food, but you also have a lot of estates in various places. Let me ask Jean Qin Wang, like this, how can I squander it? Jean Qin Wang propped up his chin and slightly considered, I can't let my wife squander it. Isn't this husband not doing enough? In the end, did he not do enough, or did he do too much? This was not a self-deprecation, but a blatant show-off. If this was spread out, he would be beaten to death. Then Wan, how about we spend money to buy it from outside in the future? I've had enough of you. Spending money to buy it from outside, not to mention spending a lot of money, the things were absolutely not that good. After all, the things that Jean Qin Wang made, many of them could not be bought even if one had money. Just to achieve the achievement of squandering, to do it like this, how brainless was it? Well, it seems that it's destined that I can't let Wan squander it. My wife has become the most thrifty Wang Fei in history. The corner of Jingwan's mouth twitched, and once again, she did not want to talk to him. No matter how thrifty she was, it was impossible to reach the so-called most. According to the history that she understood, the Wangye that declined due to various reasons, in the end, their Wang Fei had to secretly sew and patch things up to subsidize the family, hating that they could not break a copper coin in half. The stinginess that was forced out by life was not inferior to the most stingy of women. And the current Jean Qin Wang Fu, to be honest, even if her expenses were not particularly large, compared to other Wang Fu, it was absolutely extravagant. Therefore, she really could not be as shameless as a certain someone. Ah Yuan, the plan to target the Western Han Nu and Northern Han Nu, has it already begun to be implemented? Jingwan softly asked. Indeed. If the plan succeeds, will the current situation in the northwest change? Fu Yunting will always have a few victories. Otherwise, wouldn't he be even worse than in his previous life? After all, he was given support early on, and the starting point is completely different. However, the commander of the Western Han Nu and Northern Han Nu alliance is the Western Han Nu's virtuous king. This person's prestige in the Western Han Nu is very high. Moreover, when he was young, he lived and studied in Qi Yuan, former Wei, southern Qi, and even Songjin and many other countries. It can be said that he has a deep understanding of these countries. If he had long been ambitious, then at that time, he would have already analyzed the armies of each country to a certain extent. He can definitely be said to be resourceful. The Han Nu army was originally brave and skilled in battle. With this kind of commander, it will certainly be a very difficult bone to chew. Therefore, to defeat the Han Nu, it's not enough to just dismantle the alliance. The most important thing is still this virtuous king. However, this virtuous king is not without weaknesses. After all, the Han Nu are also fighting for power. This kind of thing, everywhere is a temptation. There will always be people who want to monopolize power. Once someone becomes an obstacle, naturally they will think of ways to get rid of them, even if this person is very important to the country and the people. It's precisely because he's important that he has to be eliminated. That's right. This kind of person, unless he sits in the highest position, will always attract the most enemies. He will be restrained and obstructed by all sides. Therefore, this man in front of her was the best. He hid his power deeply, but on the surface, he was unscrupulous and flamboyant. He was simply the model of doing things in a low-key way and being a high-profile person. Jingwan sat on his lap and pulled at his face. Therefore, after being reborn, it was indeed a cheat. He had the advantage in all aspects, especially this man's outstanding ability. If he still couldn't win, then there probably wouldn't be a winner in life in this world. A few days later, Li Hongyuan and Jing Wan received news about Su Mingzhong. According to the time, he should have arrived at the banishment site. However, the person who arrived was not Su Mingzhong, but another person who looked similar to Su Mingzhong. Because the locals had never seen Su Mingzhong before, even if it was a portrait, they didn't suspect a bit. So, where did Su Mingzhong get swapped? No one knows. Li Hongyuan said indifferently. Your Highness, please forgive me. She didn't dare to explain. Should we immediately send people to investigate? Li Hongyuan waved his hand. Enough, don't worry about it. Since they found someone to replace him, that means he changed his identity. The world is so big, where are we going to find him? This matter was originally expected. Cutting off his path of survival, a person like Su Mingzhong will not remain silent. He will definitely think of a way to come back, even if he has to give up his identity. Jing Wan also looked indifferent. She didn't care much about it, but we don't know where he will come from. In Qi Yuan, there might be a young general, but it's impossible to have a young minister or a young first-rank official. Su Mingzhong is in his 30s, and he is no longer allowed to take the imperial examination. He has to climb up step by step. Li Hongming can't wait. After all, Li Hongming needs help now. So, for now, the Northwest is the only place he can go. For now. Is there another place he can go? Or is there going to be war in other places? Who knows? Besides, even if there is no war, there are many ways to create one. No matter how capable I am, I can't have people all over Qi Yuan. However, I can send a letter to Fu Yunting and ask him to pay attention. After all, the possibility of going to the Northwest is the highest. It's just that there shouldn't be any news in a short time. If he wants to be promoted, he must show his face in front of the general. If he doesn't have enough military achievements and performance, how can he stand in front of the general? If we don't pay attention to where Su Mingzhong is going, will they succeed? Jing Wan felt that some people really couldn't be underestimated. Maybe. No one knows if there will be any accidents until the last step. Moreover, not everyone who gives up their pen to join the army can stand up. Even if there is someone to help them, they are still stubborn. Even if they are forcibly helped up, there will be a time when they will be exposed. Sooner or later, they won't be able to stand up. Has a Yuan ever thought of killing the people on the way to prevent future trouble? Li Hongyuan looked at Jing Wan with a little surprise. It seems that Wan has been reading so many files during this period of time, and it has been quite effective. What does this have to do with the files? They are two completely different things. I just feel that doing this is more in line with your style of doing things. Wan, I don't think I will directly kill people related to the Su clan. Otherwise, the problem with Su Mingzhong wouldn't be so complicated to solve. After all, he raised me, so I have to leave some leeway when doing things. I can't let people say that I don't care about friendship at all. Jing Wan only gave him 2 words. Haha. Was the King of Hell a person who cared about reputation, face, and friendship? Li Hongyuan sighed and touched Jing Wan's head. Give a little hope, then crush it. Give a little more hope, then crush it. Let people fall into madness and despair little by little. Isn't that more interesting? Moreover, I also want to see how tenacious the Su clan is, and how many times they can climb up. To torture people like this, how much hatred did they have? It seems that before, someone's attitude towards noble consort Su hadn't reached this point. When did it start to change? Jing Wan's eyes flashed. If that's the case, then let's wait and see. Li Hongyuan kissed Jing Wan. Some things are still just guesses. I still need to verify them. Once I've checked them out, I'll tell you, okay? You've already told me your deepest secret. Would I still care about this? Li Hongyuan had spent some time sorting out some things from his previous life. Because it had been a long time, he spent a lot of time unraveling things bit by bit. Then, he really did discover some things that he had overlooked before, some things that could be said to be very important. And these things should be verified very soon. Half a month later, solid news of victory came from the Northwest again. Commander-in-Chief Fu Yunting had schemed to drive a wedge between the Xiongnu Alliance and the Xiongnu Alliance, causing the Xiongnu Alliance to fall apart. There was a mistake in the battle plan. The Xiongnu alliance didn't act according to plan, and the Xiongnu commander-in-chief was besieged by Fu Yunting. He was injured and fled in defeat. In one battle, tens of thousands of Xiongnu were wiped out, and a prefecture was taken back. The imperial court was really happy for once. They sang praises to Lu Chengdi and Qi Yuan. Lu Chengdi didn't need to think too much about what he was thinking. At least on the surface, he had a stiff smile on his face, which made people feel uncomfortable. Ruan Ruizhong and Luo Peishan lowered their eyes. Both of them said that they were old and dim-sighted. The weather was hot, and beads of sweat could get into their eyes, so they didn't see anything. The others continued to be happy, and continued to make things difficult for the emperor. This kind of joy didn't last long. The problem with some of the granaries was suddenly revealed. The granaries that were supposed to be mobilized were not filled with grain, but with sand and stones. The grain and fodder transported to the northwest would run out. The consumption of grain for 200,000 to 300,000 soldiers couldn't be underestimated. It was a huge amount every day. Moreover, they didn't eat as much as they wanted. Once the grain was cut off, the consequences would be unimaginable. No one could win a battle with an empty stomach. At this time, such a thing happened. It was like a basin of ice water was poured over them in the middle of winter. It chilled them to the core. Only Ruan Ruizhong and Luo Peishan looked at each other. The emperor really took action. Although the grain and fodder was jointly handled by the Ministry of Revenue and the Ministry of War, the former was responsible for the collection and purchase, and the latter was responsible for the transportation. However, other people were not ignorant of this. It was reasonable to say that in this special period, there was a shortage of manpower. Other people had to make way for other things. However, from the beginning of the war, the people who were really busy were only the people of these two ministries. According to Lu Chengdi's words, everyone had their own duties. They couldn't put other matters of Qi Yuan aside because of the war. What he said seemed to be very reasonable, and he seemed to be very confident about the war in the northwest. However, after thinking about it carefully, the Ministry of Revenue and the Ministry of War were so busy, and they barely managed to settle the matter of grain and fodder. After transferring some people from other places, how could they be busier than the Ministry of Revenue and the Ministry of War? Others didn't know, but Ruan Ruizhong and Luo Peishan got the news from Li Hongyuan. In fact, there were already clues about part of the empty granaries, but it was hidden. In fact, this matter had been reported to the emperor through the blackguard from the beginning. Lu Chengdi kept it a secret. They still hoped that the emperor was thinking about the overall situation. At this time, it would do more harm than good to make the matter known. But now, they were completely disappointed. The grain had to be thoroughly investigated, and the shortage of grain had to be found from other places. Later on, some of the grain could be transferred from the south, but it would be too late in the near future. They had to buy from the people. The grain merchants would make up the bulk, followed by the rich families. If they really couldn't do it, they would have to collect from the people. Someone had to do all these things, and it had to be done quickly. However, Lu Chengdi absolutely didn't want things to be done quickly. The Ministry of Revenue definitely didn't have enough manpower. Then, should they send people to help? In fact, everyone knew that this wasn't an easy task, and it was easy to offend people. After all, grain was the lifeblood of the people. Lu Chengdi was angry that the courtiers didn't do anything at this critical time, but he didn't think so in his heart. After all, there were so many soldiers, and he was conflicted in his heart. Prince Rue was once again called by his mother. The mother and son also whispered to each other. Not long after, Prince Rue played the music and became the emperor, willing to share his father's worries. Because of the matter of his sister, Princess Minxiang, Prince Rue didn't have a proper job until now. Lu Chengdi narrowed his eyes and looked at Prince Rue for a moment. Approved. Third brother, this matter is very important, but the people are the foundation of the country. You should do your best, but don't act rashly. Yes, father. This son understands. Those who didn't know would think that Lu Chengdi was thoughtful, but those who knew would think that he was simply telling Prince Rue to take it slow and not rush. It was so chilling. Originally, in their opinion, although Lu Chengdi didn't have many achievements, he had done his best for the country and the people. Although he wasn't very outstanding, he was still qualified. However, they didn't expect that for some unknown reason, he would ignore so many soldiers who guarded the country for him. Such an immoral emperor was no different from a fatuous one. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/126468848. HTML. Please click here to report. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.bicken.com. Bicken.com mobile version reading website. Bicken.com. Chapter 495. If they really wanted to exterminate the Fu family, at most, they would just throw away some of their reputation and directly kill them. However, the emperors of the Qiuan dynasty from generation to generation were all the same. For the sake of their reputation and face, they could do many, many things and disregard many, many lives. If it was Jin Qin Wang, he could just find an excuse to exterminate your entire family. He didn't care if other people believed in the so-called reason. If he exterminated them, other people wouldn't dare to say anything in front of him. As an emperor, although he paid attention to the implementation of benevolence, he still had to have the courage. Especially when facing an opponent that the emperor himself felt was a threat, there was no need to be polite. As the emperor, he was the most lawless and unreasonable person. Killing people was a privilege among privileges. From this point of view, Jin Qin Wang simply didn't look like a descendant of the Li family, especially the bloodline of the emperor. Well, he shouldn't think like that. After all, wasn't that suspecting that the imperial Gue Fei had cuckolded the emperor? Even if Jin Qin Wang didn't look like Lu Qingdi, he shouldn't have such thoughts. Not to mention that the imperial Gue Fei herself came from a prestigious family, she would never do such a thing. Just talk about how the emperor treasured the imperial Gue Fei and couldn't wait to tie her to his belt. How could the imperial Gue Fei have anything to do with others? Ruan Ruizhong and Luo Peishan both kept silent. Jin Qin Wang was already prepared, so there was no need to worry. However, from this point of view, Lu Chengdi had been thrown far behind. However, the one with a truly terrible reputation, the one rumored to be ruthless and cruel, was clearly Jin Qin Wang, while Lu Chengdi was still a benevolent monarch on the surface. The former was wholeheartedly thinking for the soldiers, while the latter disregarded the life and death of the soldiers. How ironic was it that these two did things? Once Prince Rue took the task, he quickly left the capital with his men to handle the matter. Everyone in the capital was watching and waiting. Moreover, they all had their own thoughts. Prince Rue could be said to have absolutely carried out Lu Chengdi's orders. He didn't take the grain by force, the price of the grain couldn't be high, and he directly issued a death order. Anyone who violated the order would be severely punished. If so, how could they buy grain? Persuade and coax, say all kinds of good words? And even lower himself? No matter what Prince Rue's original intention was, the people in charge of executing the order understood it as such. In any case, they relied on the government to make a living. Why should they treat these lowly commoners with such attitude? How could he not be angry? Prince Rue only wanted to do his best for his imperial father, but he had unknowingly offended these people completely. Moreover, would they not do it just because he told them not to? How many pairs of eyes do you, Li Hongming, have? How far can you see? Feigning compliance on the surface but opposing in secret had always been their specialty. Not taking it by force. They were government officials. How could they take the grain by force? It was people who delivered the grain to them. Can't the price of the grain be high? Don't worry, they will only spend 1 copper coin on something that costs 3 copper coins. They won't even use a single copper coin. What about handing the rest back? Haha, of course I'll put it in my own pocket. Can't I be quick? Of course, they spent most of the day bragging and drinking. Even if they wanted to be quick, they couldn't be quick. Originally, the grain merchants were the ones who sold the bulk of the grain. However, these people had also received benefits from the grain merchants. The grain merchants sold the grain at a higher price, and the grain was also old and moldy. They even hid some of it and didn't give out all of it. As for where Li Hongming was, his orders were strictly carried out within a certain range. Therefore, he did not notice that something was wrong at all. As he watched the rations slowly increase, he secretly calculated the time in his heart. When he felt that it was about time, he slowly sent out the first batch of rations. At this time, the Northwest Army was almost out of rations. Even if they borrowed some from the local people and tightened their belts, they would be able to last for 3 days at most. Everything that happened was reported back by Li Hongyuan's people in detail, but Lu Qingdi and many court officials didn't know anything. Jing Wan saw it first. Prince Rui hasn't come into contact with people at this level. He thought that as a prince, his orders would be carried out absolutely. After all, he was used to being praised in the capital. Those people below him also did their best to help him get the throne. It can be said that they followed his orders and prohibitions. But he didn't know that everywhere he went, there would be complaints from the people. Clearly, the serious flood in the south 2 years ago didn't happen because it was handled properly and in time. Wan, just say that he is stupid. Why do you have to be so tactful? He was not the only one who went. He was overconfident, headstrong, and didn't listen to others' advice. Jing Wan didn't comment on this. But, why did Prince Rui take the initiative to get involved in this matter? He even carried out His Majesty's orders. Could it be that he knows something? Instead of saying that he knows something, it's better to say that his mother told him something, and that the Su family knows something. This is impossible. How could the Su family know something that no one else in the imperial family knows? If only imperial concubine Su knows, then it can be said that His Majesty's brain is not clear and told her. Jing Wan looked at Li Hongyuan's unchanged expression and thought quickly. She suddenly thought of a possibility. If the Su family really knows, then it can only mean that the Fu family's matter is related to the Su family. Is this the thing that a Yuan wants to investigate? Now tell me, is it clear or has there been a big breakthrough? I've checked the history of that year. Although the Su family is not prominent now, the Su family should have been one of the 4 dukes and 9 marquises. Moreover, it should have been a duke. However, for some reason, they didn't even get a marquis in the end. Is Ah Yuan suspecting that this has something to do with His Majesty's targeting of the Fu family? Li Hongming's actions are not as simple as a suspicion. Even if I wanted to do something in the imperial palace, it would be impossible. So, there is no way to start the investigation from the imperial palace. But the Su family is different. His tone showed that he didn't take the Su family seriously at all. It seemed that even if he had to turn the Su family upside down, he would still find the answer. If it was confirmed, then he would have a big grudge with imperial concubine Su and the Su family. After all, according to a certain person's reaction, he blamed imperial concubine Su and the Su family for everything related to himself in his previous life. It was no wonder that his attitude towards imperial concubine Su had changed so completely. After all, even if imperial concubine Su drugged him, sterilized him, and harmed his body, his emotions were still stable and he didn't even care about it. Send a set of things to official Ruan and official Luo. Tell them to prepare. Since Li Hongming took the initiative to jump in, if we don't teach him a lesson, wouldn't we be letting him down? Originally, she wanted to keep it for a while, but since it was like this, she would collect some interest first. He's no longer your hidden god. If you're not used to it, just call him Qian Yi. It's the same as Gong Jiu. In order to ease the heavy atmosphere, Jing Wan teased. Li Hongyuan tilted his head. As long as you're happy, Wan. What do you mean by as long as I'm happy? It's for you to get used to it. Don't put everything on my head. Qian Yi, did you hear that? Hurry up and thank the princess for giving you a name. Li Hongyuan turned his spearhead to Imperial Guard Qian. Imperial Guard Qian felt that he was being shot while lying down. Anyone could tell that the princess was joking. After all, Gong Jiu said to the outside world that he was brought back from Jiangnan. If his name was added with numbers, wouldn't it be suspicious for no reason? However, Imperial Guard Qian still respectfully thanked Jing Wan. The world was big, but his master was the most important. Have you sent the grain to the northwest? So, he forgot about the habit in the blink of an eye. Replying to the prince, according to the time, it should be here today. Whether it was an or Qian it was just a title. As hidden guards, they didn't care about it. Li Hongyuan nodded. These soldiers, he still wanted to keep them for the war in the future. He didn't want to lose them for no reason. At the same time, Fu Yunting was gritting his teeth in the barracks. He still didn't understand why the emperor did this. When their Fu family went to war, they would never just bury themselves in the war. They would always try to understand the relevant matters. Even if they didn't know that they were going to war, but as a member of the Fu family, they would still subconsciously try to understand. And because of Jin Qinhuang's relationship, it wasn't difficult for him to find out. With the current situation of Qi Yuan, even if they supported the Northwest Army for a year and a half, it wouldn't be a problem. But now, they were telling him that there was a problem. The grain didn't arrive on time? If they put some thought into it, this kind of situation would never happen. Why the hell was this? Moreover, the news was only sent when the food supply was close to running out. If the soldiers' daily meals were reduced a little in advance, they would be able to hold on for a little longer. If they even forgot to send a message in advance, who would believe it? Even if they wanted to take Fu Yunting's life, even if they wanted the Fu family to be destroyed, this world belonged to him, surnamed Li. These soldiers were also surnamed Li's soldiers. Did he not feel the slightest heartache? These things couldn't be let the soldiers know. If they knew, it would shake their morale. If the person who worked for them didn't care about their life and death, who would still work for them? They could only be carried by him. General. The tent door was opened and two resolute-looking young men came in. Dressed in armor, one hand holding a weapon at their waist and the other holding a helmet. Impressively, these two were the young generals that were selected to go to war with Fu Yunting. In these 3 months, it was like they were reborn. Come, sit. Fu Yunting said expressionlessly. General, the food in the common people's homes has basically been taken out. They really can't hold on anymore. But in the current situation, we can't even withdraw our troops. After all, if we withdraw, the common people will. One of the young men said in an unusually pained tone. Before going to the battlefield, he had always underestimated war. It was so cruel and so shocking. The smallest person could also do the greatest things. But now, they couldn't protect them. Thinking about it made him feel bitter. Withdraw? Of course we can't withdraw. Fu Yunting clenched his fists. No matter what, he couldn't give up on the common people. But what about the soldiers under his command? Would they starve to death? Or would they be killed by the enemy and die because they were powerless to resist? General. Another young general hurried in. He was panting because he came too quickly. Fu Yunting stood up. He thought that the Xiongnu army had already known about the situation at Qiyuan and was advancing again. Don't panic. No, General. It's that someone outside the camp sent food and asked us to send people to receive it. The convoy transporting the food is less than 30 miles away from the camp. The surprise came so suddenly. Quick, come with me. There were several people outside the camp. They looked like merchants, but they also looked like common people. After a short conversation between the two sides, Fu Yunting also confirmed that the food was real. 30 miles was completely within the range of scouts. It was only because it was at his rear and was in an absolutely safe position that it didn't attract any attention. And the amount of food was also huge. Not to mention them, even the entire Northwest Army could last for half a month. According to the other side, the soldiers were serving the country and the people. They couldn't do much, so they could only do their best. The other generals were extremely grateful to them. The food was delivered at the right time. But Fu Yunting called the leader to say a few words in private. His Highness asked me to tell General that you can fight without worry. He will take care of the matters at the rear. This batch of food is more than enough to last until the next batch arrives. Moreover, the food from the south is also on the way. We won't let the soldiers starve to protect the country. Before Fu Yunting could open his mouth, the other side spoke first. Fu Yunting's hanging heart finally calmed down. Go and report to His Highness. Fu Yunting can guarantee with his head that we won't let him down. General is too serious. I asked General to send people with me to bring the food back. Good. Fu Yunting immediately gathered enough people to bring the food back. Because they knew that the food had arrived, the originally listless soldiers suddenly became excited and wanted to help. When they saw the large caravan of food and even live livestock accompanying them, many people were almost drooling. Fu Yunting slightly narrowed his eyes. It seems that he neglected his rear. Even if the enemy can't come, what about his own people? If the emperor can do something like suddenly running out of food, then maybe he can send another group of people to cause trouble without any preparation. If they happen to be on the battlefield, their own people can casually stab them with a knife. It's enough to be fatal. Therefore, the rear must also be paid attention. Even if they receive the order in advance, they must also be on guard. In addition to the main grain, there were also a lot of dried vegetables, cured meat, and even dried salted fish from the south. Not to mention the live livestock. Not to mention the previous months of war. Even when there wasn't a war, there wasn't such a rich supply. Moreover, many of the soldiers were born ordinary people. Their families may not even eat meat for a month, so they were really drooling. Because of the hot weather, the food doesn't taste good even if it doesn't spoil easily. There's not a lot of meat, so it's better to eat it as soon as possible. What's wrong with that? There's nothing to eat. You can even eat tree roots. You don't smell good, but I smell very good. A young general next to him couldn't help but sniff. He looked like he was craving for food. Good for you. When you were in the capital, you ate all kinds of delicacies, Fu Yunting scolded jokingly. General, you said that you were in the capital. It's been a few months. How can it be the same? I reckon that when I return to the capital in the future, I will be able to eat an entire table. However, in the future, I won't be so picky and waste food. Sometimes, being able to eat is already a great blessing. He sighed. Everyone else had similar feelings as well. Alright, let's not talk nonsense. Once we're full, we'll chase the Xiongnu people out, take back the territory of Qi Yuan, and avenge the people who died. That's the most important thing. The soldiers shouted 3 times. They were full of morale. There were only a few tens of thousands of people in the place where Fu Yunting was stationed. Because they still had to send the food out, they had to be careful during the process. Fu Yunting arranged everything and returned to his tent. His expression was exceptionally cold. Then, he spread out a piece of paper and grinded it. He picked up a brush and wrote a memorial. He exaggerated the situation of the soldiers in the army before they received the food. He described all kinds of sad and difficult situations. It could be said that he was in tears. He also described the joy after receiving the food. He even praised the people who went through life and death with them and the loyal and righteous actions of the caravan who delivered the food. He wanted to see if the emperor, as an emperor who cut off food for his soldiers, would be angrier and want to kill him when he saw these, or would he feel guilty? Was he worthy of being an emperor? In addition, there was another letter. It was written to inform him about the food shortage. The time was clearly written. There was no time at first, but Li Hongyuan sent a person who was good at imitating. That method could completely pass off the fake as the real thing. It was just adding a date. It was too easy. The date was written 2 or 3 days before Fu Yunting received the letter. He wanted to ask, in the entire court, did no one consider the matter of notifying in advance? They were caught off guard and were not prepared at all. If it were not for the righteous people sending the food, would the soldiers of Qi Yuan have starved to death instead of dying on the battlefield? To put it bluntly, Fu Yunting wanted to disgust him. Therefore, when this memorial was sent back, it was not sent as an urgent report. It was sent as an ordinary memorial by an official. It was also not encrypted. Therefore, the first person to see it would not be Lu Qingdi. Moreover, he believed that with Prince Jin around, many people would see this memorial. Although it was an ordinary memorial, it was sent out from the northwest battlefield. Therefore, the speed was definitely not slow. At most, it would take 7 or 8 days. It was definitely not like the other memorials sent by local officials. If it was slow, it would take less than a month. After sending out the memorial, Fu Yunting wrote another letter and handed it to the personal guard. The person Li Hongyuan left him to be in charge of the messenger. After that, Fu Yunting did not care anymore. In any case, he knew that he was not liked by Prince Jin. Other than the war, he did not expect Prince Jin to tell him about the matters in the capital. Not being able to see Lu Chengdi's reaction with his own eyes, Fu Yunting still felt a little regretful. However, when he thought of all the things that Prince Jin had done, he could not help but rejoice in his misfortune. For the sake of Prince Jin, you did not care about the severity of the matter. In the end, you were still schemed against by your son. Every time you almost vomited blood, you only thought that it was a freak combination of factors and completely did not know that someone was playing tricks behind your back. Thinking of this, Fu Yunting felt that his anger towards Lu Chengdi dissipated a lot. It could be imagined how wonderful Lu Chengdi's expression would be after he saw the memorial. At that time, all the civil and military officials in the court basically knew about the contents of the memorial. Lu Chengdi even had the thought of flaying Fu Yunting alive. Miscalculation, it was truly a miscalculation. He did not want to touch Fu Yunting. Even if he did not have the strict teachings of his father since childhood, he was still an expert in battle. However, the more it was like this, the more it showed that Fu Yunting had wild ambitions. Otherwise, how could he learn those things? Therefore, Fu family really could not be left alive. Not only Wu Anho's branch, the entire Fu family could not be left alive. Even if they were the closest to Wu Anho's residence, they did not have many interactions. Who knew if they were just doing it for him to see? Lu Chengdi still did not regret sending Fu Yunting to the battlefield. Because that was the only way to find the crime of confiscating and exterminating the entire family. The courtiers praised the righteousness of the merchants while questioning who was responsible for such a big matter and who should be punished severely. There were still other important matters to solve. Naturally, it was time to vigorously search for the whereabouts of the grain. It was not a small amount of grain, but hundreds of thousands of dawn. So much grain was definitely not something that 1 or 2 people could swallow. This was a very serious case of embezzlement. If they did not investigate, they would not be able to appease the citizens. If they did not investigate, they would be letting down the soldiers who almost got into trouble. Because they did not know Lu Chengdi's true thoughts, they all expressed their own opinions. Lu Chengdi watched from above. He was so aggrieved that he was about to bleed internally. Because from his own point of view, the courtiers were right. If the general was not Fu Yunting, he would only be angrier than them. He would want to find out the vermin even more. Enough, all of you shut up for me. Lu Chengdi roared. He rubbed his throbbing temples. This matter cannot be suppressed. Once it is suppressed, he would be questioned as the emperor. Since the grain was gone, he could investigate from this aspect. But if this matter was not discovered in time, it would be the responsibility of the Ministry of Revenue. Also, if he did not send a letter to the Northwest Army in time, it would be easy to find a scapegoat. However, if this continues, the courtiers will sooner or later understand that the emperor's attitude towards Fu Yunting, Wu Anho, and the Fu family was not as simple as just disliking Fu Yunting. The emperor will not accept them and entrust them with heavy responsibilities just because of their military exploits. Because Lu Chengdi's emotions will be completely exposed sooner or later. It was obvious that this matter was of great importance. It was also a cooperation between the Ministry of Justice and the Supreme Court. At the same time, the Grand Secretary of the Cabinet and the Minister of Personnel were also involved. The latter two were not there to investigate the case, but to deter the emperor. There was also Li Suyen, who brought along some of the black-robed guards to deal with any troublesome matters that might arise. The few important officials of the Ministry of Revenue who were guilty bodies could not be left out. This group of people also left the capital very quickly. However, they only left the capital for 2 days before they ran into refugees. Qi Yuan has been having good weather for the past 2 years. Even the flood 2 years ago, there were no refugees in the north. This year, there were no natural disasters or man-made disasters. So how did the refugees come? The others looked at each other in dismay. Ruan Ruizhong and Luo Peishan were well aware of the situation, but they were also surprised on the surface. Both of them were experts at acting. As the Grand Secretary of the Cabinet, they were responsible for assisting the emperor in handling the world's affairs. Naturally, they had to ask about the refugees. If they didn't ask, they wouldn't know. But once they did, many people's hearts almost jumped out of their chests. Especially those who supported Prince Rue. Prince Rue had just been released from prison, and now he's causing trouble again? If this matter was proven to be true, then it would not be as simple as a fine of salary and confinement. All of them were roaring in their hearts. Prince Rue didn't understand, but didn't the people around him understand as well? How did such a thing happen? Although not all of Prince Rue's subordinates worked for him, there were still 2 or 3 of them who were his trusted aides. They felt wronged and depressed. At the beginning, they had told Prince Rue that it was inappropriate because it was a special period and it was allowed to use some special means. However, Prince Rue didn't listen to them and insisted that he knew what he was doing. He also told them that those who were responsible for collecting grains shouldn't be trusted easily and should be vigilant. When Prince Rue saw the peace and prosperity in the Mu 3 Mu, he told them that they were thinking too much and that no matter how bold they were, they wouldn't dare to disobey him. He said it twice, but the master didn't listen and even thought that he was tired of it. Anyone would feel disappointed. The grain's destination hadn't been investigated yet, and this happened. Obviously, they couldn't just ignore it. Therefore, they finally decided to split into 2 groups. It could be said that Prince Rue had stirred up a big problem and would almost be escorted back to the capital. Therefore, Li Suyen would definitely be there. And this matter was relatively clear. The Ministry of Justice and the Supreme Court only sent a small number of people. It was just that these people needed to be settled down and local officials needed to cooperate. Ruan Ruizhong decided to go personally. When Prince Rue saw Ruan Ruizhong and the others, it couldn't be said that he wasn't surprised. Suppressing the doubts in his heart, he exchanged a few pleasantries and said that he was about to send the 3rd batch of grain. Ruan Ruizhong looked at him and sighed. His ability was actually not bad, but he wasn't Prince Jin's opponent at all. Along the way, he also understood that those refugees, 200 to 300 people, were actually from a few nearby villages. In fact, it wasn't to the point that they had to leave their homes. They would do so and even avoid the local officials. To put it bluntly, it was arranged by people. However, because they didn't go too far, it wasn't easy to investigate. Moreover, after sending them back, there really wasn't a bit of food left. They felt that the capital was prosperous and the emperor was there, so he should make decisions for them. Could you say that they didn't think it through and couldn't reach the capital like this? Could you say that they did wrong? It was just a bait to draw out the mess that Prince Rue had created. So what if there were suspicions? These commoners didn't know anything. In the end, they just felt that a certain person with ulterior motives felt that Prince Rue was heartless and hoped to attract the attention of the imperial court. If they couldn't catch this person with ulterior motives, it was impossible to kill these foolish commoners. Ruan Ruizhong explained everything simply. They wanted to invite Prince Rue back to the capital. Prince Rue was completely dumbfounded and couldn't speak at all. Before taking on the task, he fully thought that this time he would be able to please his father emperor, but in the end. Although he wasn't shackled, but in Li Hongming's heart, he still felt that he was being treated like a released person. However, he couldn't say anything. They, the princes, still feared Father Emperor's blackguard. Moreover, because they didn't find out the reason behind the assassination, Lu Chengdi finally dismissed the commander of the blackguard and let him go back early to take care of his child. Now, it could be said that Li Suyen had the final say in the blackguard. Although he was still in charge, there were other people who knew about it. Obviously, the blackguard wouldn't have a commander for the time being. When they returned to the capital, Ruan Ruiz Hong had already prepared the memorial. The efficiency of the blackguard was also very efficient. They had already figured out the whole story. Li Suyen had also written the memorial. Lu Chengdi was still puzzled. After reading the memorial, he was so angry that he fell backwards and directly smashed the memorial onto the face of Prince Rue, who was kneeling below. Idiot! 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 Why did I give birth to such an idiot like you? Lu Chengdi's roar could be heard even from far away outside the hall. Prince Rue's face had been stripped clean by Lu Chengdi. Prince Rue clenched his fists, but lowered his head to hide the storm in his eyes. He didn't say anything. He was very clear that he did bear most of the responsibility for this matter. However, it didn't mean that he could tolerate being fooled by those ants that he could kill with one slap. After venting his anger, Lu Chengdi was unusually tired. This was once his favorite son. He felt that he was excellent in every way and once regarded him as his successor. However, as he came into contact with more things, his problems were also exposed, and not just a little. Get out. Go back and reflect on your mistakes. Cultivate your mind and character, and read more books. Lu Chengdi said lightly. Father. This punishment seemed to be harmless, but there was no time limit. Moreover, Lu Chengdi didn't even have any emotions. There was nothing worse than this. Moreover, it was clearly done according to his wishes, which led to this result. Now, he didn't give any face at all. This was too heartless. Get out. Prince Rue resisted the trembling of his body. He didn't want to be thrown out and lose even his last bit of dignity. This son takes his leave. However, the resentment and hatred in his heart were about to solidify. Most of it was directed at his good father, Lu Chengdi. Prince Rue's face was gloomy. No one dared to go forward and provoke him. However, there were exceptions. Prince Kong blocked Prince Rue's way. Third Prince, did you mess up your job and get reprimanded by father? Oh, it's a small matter. Which one of us brothers hasn't been reprimanded before? Don't take it to heart. When father's anger subsides, everything will be fine. The gloating on his face couldn't be more obvious. Get out. Prince Rue brushed him aside and left directly. Now, he couldn't maintain any of his elegance. Prince Kong was angry. You. He suddenly shut his mouth. Li Hongming had always been good at putting on an act. He was gentle to outsiders. He didn't even act like this when he was fired from the Ministry of Personnel last time. It was obvious that this matter would only be more serious. Go and find out what's going on. It wasn't a secret, so it wasn't difficult to find out. His subordinates deceived their superiors and even dared to fool the imperial court's prince. Lu Chengdi certainly wouldn't sit by and do nothing. He had already ordered Li Suyen to dispatch the blackguards to arrest all the related people from top to bottom and deal with them severely. However, after imperial concubine Su learned of the matter, she fainted from anger. It was unknown whether she blamed her son for not doing a good job or secretly hated herself for coming up with such a bad idea. In fact, many people were like Prince Kong. Originally, no one wanted to take the job. Li Hongming was so eager to take it. They thought he was very capable. In the end, he didn't do it well and even got himself involved. Wasn't that just making people clap their hands in joy? It wasn't easy for imperial concubine Su to wake up. After waking up, her health became worse and worse. However, this was a very normal thing. Imperial concubine Su sent everyone out and stayed alone for at least an hour. Then, she let her mother enter the palace. Because of Su Mingzhong's matter, the old lady's condition wasn't good either. However, The Su family knew very well that they were in the same boat as imperial concubine Su and her son. If they couldn't get better, then no one could. Therefore, no matter how bad it was, she forced herself to enter the palace. Imperial concubine Su's heart ached when she saw her mother's trembling appearance. However, there was no other way. She couldn't leave this matter to others. This time, imperial concubine Su didn't say anything else. She just let her mother take 2 letters out. One was for her son, Li Hongming, and the other was for the right commander-in-chief, Shen Shuhan. The letter for Li Hongming was just a passing thing. As Shen Shuhan's aunt, this old lady's weight was more important than others. It also showed the seriousness of the matter. After sending out these 2 letters, imperial concubine Su completely quieted down. She didn't even make any moves against Jingwan. She didn't think about anything else and began to recuperate peacefully. From this point of view, it was enough to show that imperial concubine Su's mental fortitude was definitely beyond the reach of most people in the world. At the same time, Fu Yunting sent back a report. It said that the grain sent to the northwest was mixed with a lot of sand and gravel. There was also a lot of old grain and moldy grain. It wasn't impossible to eat it after cleaning it up. However, it was said that the grain was bought from grain merchants. Was the official in charge of this matter deceived? In addition, it was also extremely inappropriate for the grain to be in the hands of ordinary people. Therefore, the emperor was requested to investigate and purge this matter. In addition, 2 days after those righteous soldiers sent the grain, the Xiongnu launched another large-scale attack. If it wasn't for that batch of grain, the soldiers would have been hungry and powerless to fight. At that time, it was very likely that the entire army would have been wiped out. The defense line would have collapsed, and the Xiongnu would have launched a large-scale attack. Fu Yunting only requested that those people be praised and rewarded in his own name. Very good. Another crime was added to Prince Rue's list. However, there was no need to be calculative about Prince Rue. However, those black-hearted grain merchants were unlucky again. Many of their goods were confiscated. However, there were also people who suggested that these black-hearted merchants should be punished. Moreover, General Fu's suggestion was indeed appropriate. Not to mention other things, at least they should be given the title of righteous merchant. If such people were supported, it was believed that the common people would benefit. It was because these people were meddling in other people's business that his plan was ruined. Now, he wanted to give them the title of righteous merchant to facilitate their business in the future? Could he not give it to them? No, he couldn't. They had helped his soldiers and even saved the Qi Yuan to a certain extent. How could he not show any appreciation for such a great achievement? Therefore, he gritted his teeth and personally wrote the 2 words, righteous merchant, and sent it out with great fanfare. In fact, as Fu Yunting said, when the Xiongnu attacked, Emperor Lu Chengdi was initially shocked and broke out in cold sweat. However, it was only for a moment. Because it didn't happen, he didn't care. He never thought about what would happen if it happened. However, with Li Hongyuan's plan, the word happened would not appear. Until now, he still didn't reflect on himself and didn't think about replacing Fu Yunting. He still wanted to put a label on Fu Yunting. However, from Li Hongyuan's previous life, it could be seen that in Emperor Lu Chengdi's heart, Fu Yunting was more of a threat than the Xiongnu army. Even if he lost more than 200,000 soldiers and a few counties, it didn't matter. As long as he still had his throne, he would still be an insufferably arrogant emperor. It was no wonder that Li Hongyuan killed Emperor Lu Chengdi in his previous life. For such a person, even crushing his bones and scattering his ashes wouldn't be enough to vent his hatred. Jingwan looked at the letters one after another. There were all kinds of messages. She sighed and said, "The capital has been really lively recently. It's full of ups and downs. It's more exciting than a drama. We probably have to wait until the people in the Ministry of Revenue are replaced before it can stop for a while. Wan, it's too early to be at ease. Things won't stop so soon. It's you who won't stop." In Jingwan's view, as long as this person didn't stir up trouble, then things would more or less stop. Why? In Wan's eyes, am I the kind of person who looks for trouble? I also want to spend more time with Wan, right? https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/12684347. HTML. Click here to report an error. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.bicken.com. Bicken.com mobile edition website. Bicken.com. You're tuning in to the Narrate and Escape YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.